Hello, everybody. It's been a while, huh? It always feels weird to take like a week off because of whatever is happening, but it's good to be back. Hope everyone is doing well. Dad is saying good afternoon, Dad. Wakey, exactly, Swan. Get up. We need to grind. Rise and grind, or whatever the saying goes. Hello, Hector. Welcome. Welcome back, Andrew. Welcome back, Sheila. Good to see you both here. So yeah, last week we didn't have a Whip Wednesday because I was off sick. I think I got I don't know, some weird mix between potentially COVID-ish kind of stuff because it was like half a day where I lost my scent and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we're back. We're back to full strength. Yeah. So back to it, the Sigma grind, as the youngins say. Oh God. I barely know what that means, and I already don't like it. God dang it. But yeah, as you say, back to the grind here as well. Yeah, basically back into routine. It was just like a whole bunch of stuff coming together as well because my parents came over for a visit as well. So we had a good old time with way too much food, as we always do in the weekend. So that was awesome. Which also meant that I had like a proper week off as well, just doing nothing, like no PC, nothing like that, which was amazing actually. It's been a while, so it's a blessing and a curse being sick and then also not being able to do too much. That's so weird as that sounds. But yeah, back to it now. We had a couple of meetings. I did like a bunch of interviews for our new workshop organization position. And we've made our selection, and that will be announced soon. Who is our new workshop organizer? Because I am well aware, and I honestly should make a post about this, that we haven't been too transparent about the workshop since there was a whole bunch of chaos again, because Karim unfortunately had too much stuff going on, and then I was trying to take over, but then the team challenges and everything just kept piling up. So yeah, we needed someone else to help out with that. But we do have one now. So we'll make an announcement soon. And that will hopefully streamline the whole thing, which I'm freaking excited about. So yeah, that's been happening. So that's been keeping me busy in the evenings. What else? Apart from the normal meetings, not that much. It's been just, yeah. Interviews were the majority of things, basically, for this week at least. But then hopefully tomorrow, and with the long weekend coming up, I actually want to do some art. I kind of want to try out like all the new Nanite stuff, maybe PCG, like play around with like all the new things in Unreal Engine. That's kind of what I want to do, and I also have like the rest of the week off as well, because it is pretty fortunate. I think we have Friday and Monday off, and then I just decided to take like 4 days off and then basically have like a week and a half. So I'm hoping to take a bit of time and just do some more art as well. That would be awesome. Hello, Vedant. Hello, Wipes. But of course, that is for next weekend. So yeah, we need to get back on track with feedback and all that kind of stuff too. So we're gonna get started here in just a little bit. But how has everyone else been? How has everyone's week been so far? Is everyone having a good week? Tell me what you're up to. What is everyone working on? What is everyone doing? Because I hope everyone is doing well. What's happening here? And then yeah, we'll get started here in just a minute. Tired and fun as always. Oh, okay. What was fun about this week, Dad? Just the work that we're gonna be talking about in just a minute? Or are you doing some other fun stuff too? grinding out the last of the projects for class. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, I'm excited to have a look in just a minute. Because it's been a while since we've seen it, so I'm looking forward to it. Try not to burn out on the portfolio project. What are you working on, Hector? Andrew is saying a pretty good few weeks, very busy adjusting to our new house and also back to work now, but handling it well. Hey, that's awesome. Adjustment to our new house. Congratulations. I don't know if you're renting or buying or whatever's happening, but yeah, that sounds awesome, man. That sounds amazing. And I'm glad everything's going well as well. Oh man, a new house. We were looking at some houses. Sometimes I don't know, whenever I'm just like in the mood for some like devastation in the evening, I'll just look up like housing prices and all that kind of stuff. But there was actually like a really nice house like close by that recently got sold. And I'm just like, oh man, that would be so nice to just buy like a house. We were able to buy Perks of Moon away from SoCal. Oh shit, congratulations. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, oh man, I don't even know if we had the money to buy a house, you know, like where would we even buy? Because I'm kind of torn between like now I live in Leamington Spa, right? And Leamington Spa is kind of like this smallish town which has like a lot of tech happening, which is quite interesting. But then there's also this weird pull of like, oh, I would love to live like more rural and go for like a bigger house or something like that. And then whenever I need to be in a city, I can just travel to a city whenever I need to. But then I also like the convenience of just like, well, now walking to work and also just like going to like restaurants. I like just like, instead of like ordering in, I rather go like eat out to like a restaurant and make it like into like a thing. And yeah, that's something that you can't necessarily do. Or you have like a more limited range where you have to drive further, I guess. But hey, I don't have a driver's license either, so there's that issue. Maybe a rural castle. Oh my god. What would that be? Yeah, that's gonna be like easily $1 million if we're talking about a castle. Unless we're really talking about like a fixer-upper, and I mean like a fixer-upper as in like, oh, no one's looked at this castle in like 200 years and it's falling apart and doesn't have a roof. Maybe we can afford those guys. It would be crazy though. It could be one of those like €1 Italian houses, you know? There was like this whole trend like a while ago where you could buy like an Italian house, like a rural Italian house for like €1. But there were like a whole bunch of like other clauses with it that you had to invest in like local economy and like you had to have all the work done by like local people. Also didn't have internet for the most cases, so yeah. I mean, would be cool though. It's just would have to have a remote job then. Hector is working on a scene, a basement detective kind of scene, like kind of X-Files inspired. Oh, that's awesome. Tim's haunted castle coming soon. Well, that would honestly be a way to you know, like recoup on the investment. Or we'll do like haunted castle / Airbnb, you know? So that people can come to our castle, pay an entrance fee, and then also pay for staying there as well. So we're like double dipping. I like it. But yeah, that is awesome to hear, Andrew. Lovely to hear that. We can just get AI to build / renovate it for you, Tim. Oh god. I mean, where's all these robots that people were talking about that can now print houses, right? Like house-sized, like 3D printers that were promised like 10 years ago? Where are they? I know that Holland had like the biggest one, but it honestly looks terrible. So yeah, I'm still waiting on that. So let's not talk about like actual pipe dreams of all that kind of stuff. Or maybe, oh, you know what you could do? We could bring back NFTs as well. So you can buy a house, but it's actually a picture of a house. And then you just have to wait until it magically becomes real at some point, you know? I like that. I like that. I do like it. But yeah, talking about something completely different. We, hey, thanks for the sub, Bao. Appreciate it. We were just watching... Before I started prepping for Wednesday, we watched like one of the new trailers for Marathon. I don't know if anyone has seen that here. And it looks interesting-ish. Oh god, Brian. Yeah, I know. I know. Oh my god, I don't want to give him any more ideas. But yeah, the trailer for Marathon looked interesting, but I couldn't help the fact, and I haven't looked this up yet, but I was really curious if it was directed by, oh, I forgot his name, but there was this one episode. This is going to be so specific, so feel free to shout in the chat if you know this reference. But there's this one specific episode from Love, Death and Robots about like a lady in the water, and like the shooting style was just like very frantic and all over the place and very chaotic and all that kind of stuff. It felt like really disorientating. And I just had the feeling that it was directed by the same person or was like heavily inspired by that. And I couldn't... Yeah, Jantara. Yeah, that's the one. The last of the third season. Exactly. And I couldn't help but feel that it was just... It was really jarring. But I don't know what the purpose of it was, you know? So for the Love, Death and Robot episode, I could kind of get it because the episode itself, the theme was very chaotic, right? So you had a lot of fighting, a lot of chaos happening, so that's why the filming itself was chaotic. But I just couldn't get behind why it was in the Marathon trailer. I don't know. It was kind of just like this weird clash of two ideas not really working together. I don't know. It was interesting. But you know what the visual style of Marathon just like really reminds me of is Wipeout. Like that like really retro futuristic stuff, right? Where they went really hard on like different kind of fonts and different colors and like striking shapes and simplicity. Like it just really reminded me of that as well. Yeah, it was interesting though. Like it's trying to do something new, which I can get behind. I mean, quote unquote something new. It's a reimagining of like a very old game, right? So it's, I mean, technically not something new, but there's a balance when it comes to handheld cameras, and that director always overdoes it. Personally, not a fan, to be honest. Yeah, I know that you're personally not a fan. It makes me wonder. It makes me wonder if it even was that director though, because I have no clue. But it just really reminded me of his style, right? Yeah, it was interesting. It was. Oh, okay. Maybe that's just his thing then. Like this very frantic handheld camera thing, that's his style, and no matter if like the subject matter that he's using it in is appropriate, he doesn't care because that's his style now. So he kind of built like a little cage for himself. I don't know. I love thinking about loud about this stuff though, because yeah. It was very recognizable, but I just didn't know if it matched. It's very interesting. But yeah. Cool. Let's get going. What do you think? We got I think we got 14 people today. So for people that are new and are just jumping in, this is basically my weekly live stream where I talk about the progress that people have been making on their personal work, and it's just my time slot to give some feedback on that as well. So yeah, people can basically go into the Discord, tag their work up for review, and then we'll have them during this live stream. So let's switch it on over And let's get cracking, shall we? In the meantime, if you have any questions about game development, working in games as an environment artist, your own personal work, anything like that, just feel free to throw it in the chat and I can kind of mix it in somewhere where it makes sense. So yeah, let's get cracking. All right, we're not going to start with Brian. Brian, you were lucky that prep this time didn't take too long because otherwise there would be like a cutoff. But I kind of snuck you in there last moment. So let's see though. Let me grab a Discord. Let's have a look. Let's do it in order. Okay, so Kieran is first. Let's see, where's the violin? Here we go. I appreciate it. No worries, no worries. So, would appreciate thoughts. Oh, let me read the full text, right? I'm trying to skip again. So this is a new render angle and experimenting adding circular close-up shots into the main shot to showcase parts with higher fidelity in one image. Oh, okay, so you're doing like a combined shot here. Initial thoughts, I would honestly just do like full screenshots and just have like the main render and then detail shots. Because this stuff kind of feels like out of, I don't know, like a 2000s magazine, right? Where you just have like, oh my god, look at this cool detail and look at that. I get what you're trying to do, but I feel like it's just not an elegant way of doing it, I feel. I think it's honestly best to keep it really clean and just have like, maybe you could do, let's see. If you want to have a section of detail shots, right? What you could potentially do instead is just have like a grid or something like that, where you have detail shot number 1, detail shot number 2, and detail shot number 3, like down below it, you know? So you would have your main render, and then your detail shots would just be like a compilation of like multiple shots in some way. That's probably a better way to do it than trying to do it in this way, in my opinion. It does feel a little bit kitsch. But yeah, that is just my opinion on the matter, right? Because there's so many ways of doing it. Well, let's see. So the right side is left completely empty at the moment because you're adding the bow in there as well. Oh, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. So the right side is going to be filled up by other stuff. And another circular showcase for that prop as well. Okay. And then would appreciate thoughts on something like this, as I'm not that creative. What do you mean? You made this kick-ass prop. Of course you're creative. I think this comes down to actually thinking about like how you present your work, right? Like the presentation part is usually the most difficult thing because, yeah, it just comes down to what you really want to say with it, right? So that's why I'm such a big advocate of like, okay, what's a story behind this? Because once we have a story, then it becomes way easier to then tie the presentation into the story somehow, right? So for example, if we're talking about like a really unique, like heirloom violin, right? Then we can sort of tie that to it being like a really unique like heirloom piece by maybe, I don't know, making it like, oh, it's found on grandpa's attic, or maybe it is part of an auction or something like that, right? So we can kind of elevate the presentation by infusing it with a story that comes in, right? So that's why I'm always such a big proponent, because I kind of use story for everything, right? However, there's nothing wrong with just keeping it like really clean like this, right? I think there could definitely be some benefit to it. But then just go for like a more clean approach, right? I still think that it could be worth just having like a couple of Megascan assets that you just scatter in the background and try to do something where it's like more like an attic. Just really push the presentation and try to keep it consistent, right? Or like, well, try to push it to the next level basically. So let me add some notes here. So presentation, I know you're probably focusing on the violin at this point, right? But going further is probably what you want to do. And it usually doesn't take like too long, right? It's usually just like looking at what's available online and using Megascans or anything like that to kind of help you set this scene apart. So it usually doesn't take too long. Use Megascans or anything else that's available, right? Cool, but yeah, I would definitely do the presentation. Just keeping it like a little bit more clean. I know that this is like the most horrible color that I could have picked. It's barely readable. But yeah, keeping it clean is probably the best way to go about this. If you're unsure, or if even by your own admission you say, hey, I'm not that creative, right? That means that there's something like, I don't really feel secure with how I'm going about this. So that you basically have like two choices, right? Like either you simplify, which is what I just said, which is basically like the easier method, right? Like you can simplify things down, and that is usually like the more approachable method. Or you can go the other way and you invest a whole bunch of time and try like a whole bunch of different styles to see which style you like the most and then double down on that, right? But usually what happens there is that at the end of the project, we're kind of just done with the project. So that's why I'm an advocate of like keeping it simple rather than investing like a whole bunch of time again, right? But hey, the choice is yours. So yeah. So for the presentation, go simple, or in this case, explore options, right? So like this grid pattern could be like one of the options, but it's a template, right? It's a very stereotypical template that you can use, and it's also very clean. If you kind of want to set yourself apart, then you'll have to try a whole bunch of things and yeah, try more than a singular option, right? Yeah. If you are looking for some inspiration, look at how magazines or even like what could be a cool one? Like in this case, like go and look at like online violin shops, right? Or like instrument shops and see how they present their work and like how you could learn from their presentation and maybe infuse that into your work as well, right? So try to think a little bit outside of the box, and then yeah, basically comes down to this, right? Like explore your options a little bit and see what other people are doing. Because what I love is whenever someone goes outside of 3D to then infuse those ideas back into 3D. For example, people that make weapons and then do the final presentation in like a magazine or something like that, right? There's something where you take it from just being like a 3D asset to like, oh no, I'm trying to sell it as like, oh no, this is actually in a world somewhere, right? There's cool stuff that you can do with that. Or even just look at like, let's say a violin shop, like how they present their violins, right? Like what kind of lighting setup do they use? What kind of assets do they, well, assets. what kind of like ornaments do they use in their presentations, right? There's a lot that you can learn in their studio setups as well. So yeah. I hope that was helpful, Kieran. This stuff is looking really good. There's one final thing that I kind of want to say. Watch out with this little artifact here. You can either like adjust the lighting, or you would have to look at like your normals, because I think something is happening with like the normal information, either your normal map or your mesh normals, right? But watch out when you do like those detailed shots, you're basically invite people to be like more critical about the details that you showcase, right? So you need to put like everything into place. So yeah, but it's looking awesome. I can't wait to see like the bow come in as well, and then maybe taking your presentation a little bit further. But honestly, the execution of this piece by itself is looking really, really nice. So great job. Nice. Hey, Coffee, it's been a while. How are you doing? In the meantime, let's switch it on over to Swan. So Swan is next. Yeah, this is from last week, right? So apologies again for missing last week. Where are we looking here? So just wanted to ask about an earlier question. What would be the best approach to add more details and variation to my largest stone asset on the left? On the left? I guess you are referring to this guy, right? So if we're talking about this guy, just making sure, right? The bottom left, sorry, Tim. Oh, okay, so this guy over here. Okay. No worries. Because sometimes the pictures do get scrambled a little bit, right? How, so yeah, let me read the question again. So what would be the best approach to add more detail and variation to my largest stone asset on the left? I'm aware of vertex painting, RGB math, and decals, but I'm not sure which is the best approach and what combination to use for an asset of this scale. By the Unreal Mannequin. Yeah, so for the common workflow for rocks that are kind of like at this size, we usually go for like RGB masking, right? Which means that you have to create like a second UV set with, well, do you? Yeah, potentially. You might have to create like a second UV set. You then take that into Substance Painter, and then you basically generate like a bunch of masks that you then texture pack into like an RGB format, right? So every channel of an RGB texture can hold like a different mask for information. And then you can use that to drive whatever you want to drive, right? So an example could be, so your red channel could be for, what would I call them? Oh yeah, ridges. So that could be for ridges. This could be for, I don't know, cracks. And then the G channel could be for dirt or something like that, right? And these could just be like different titles, or you could just make them like a variation of your texture that you already have, right? So imagine that you have your base texture coming in, and you just change the color to be lighter, right? So for the ridges, it makes sense that stuff will be lighter, right? Because that is where it's going to come into contact with like a bunch of stuff. So that is going to get damaged by just being exposed to air, water, whatever, right? And then you can do the inverse for cracks. And then for dirt, you can actually have like a different titleable that just like gets overlaid on top of it, right? However, you are free to fill in like any of these layers with whatever you want, right? So let's say you don't want to have you don't want to have dirt, you want to have moss, or you want to have whatever, you can just replace it and still use the same mask information. So that's the way that I would do this. You could then also combine this with vertex painting, but this is more like an optional thing. Where I would use this, where I would use the combination is whenever you have like a bunch of rocks that you can see in one camera and you need more than just your RGB mask, right? Because the limitation of an RGB mask, let's say you would never do this, right? But let's say you add 2 of these, like exactly in the same rotation next to each other, you're gonna see the repetition between the 2, right? So we need to have like an additional mechanism where we can go in and potentially paint out areas or paint in areas, depending. Vertex painting could be one of the options. It could also be that you do like a world-based, like a macro mask, right? So you basically have like a large clouds that's on like a world position that then adds like a randomization on top of your RGB masking. But I would honestly, in your case, I would start out with RGB masking because you only have like the one rock that you need to be, the one rock that you need to be aware of, right? Or like careful about. Because the other ones are kind of scaled, rotated, using different placements. And then once it becomes an issue, then I would look into like adding an additional layer to it. But that's what I would do. So RGB masking. And the next question is, here are my cliffs. Oh wait, let me look at the chat as well. Hey Zayad, welcome back. Yeah, I was sick last Wednesday, so I took a week break, but I'm back now. Pupus is saying, hi Tim, I just finished your video about how to start an environment art project now. Thanks, that was very insightful. Oh, that's awesome to hear. VLCG Art was saying about the previous prop actually, about the carved wood area zoomed in. Is it baked into the texture? Looks like it's lacking a bit in texel ratio. Could be worth using that as like a UV2 for that or a floating decal. If it is like a texel density issue, I would just bump up like a texel, not the texel ratio, the texture itself. Let's say it's a 2K, I would use a 4K instead. If you're already at a 4K, yeah, then we're talking about potentially something different, but yeah. I would, at this point, when it's that finalized, I would honestly, even if it would be like a proper way to, well, not even proper way, it would be like a different way of doing things that could give you like a better end result. It might not even be worth it, honestly. It's just too big of a hassle at this point. Even though it's a great suggestion, though. Phil is saying, something that I've learned about recently, we can make use of a second UV layer in Painter with the projection settings in the layer, so you can have a mask and also preview the titleable at the correct ratio. Oh, really? With the projection settings of the layer? Oh, but that just means... Yeah, I see what you're doing. Yeah, so you're using like a projection to like preview the titleable, right? Yeah. That could be a way if you're mapping like really generic stuff. So that's still like a good way around it. Honestly, Substance, come on, just add like a second UV layer preview, please. Let me switch between my UVs. It's been like fucking 8 years, you know? Come on, add it in there. It's time. Please help us. Oh, so annoying. But yeah, let's have a look. So Swan is saying, so here are some Cliffy boys. And let me know if I need to push something else. Yeah, so it's interesting because the sculpt itself actually looks quite nice, but I think what is happening is that the detail normal, or the way that you texture it, kind of makes the rock feel like super generic again. So I think it comes down to like how you manage your detail. And what I mean by that is that this actually looks quite nice because you have certain areas that don't have a lot of detail, right? I mean, you can probably introduce more, but like some areas have like a quite nice read. However, that gets completely lost by the tileable or the texture that you add on top of it. So you got to be careful with that. Making sure that the foundational sculpt that you've made is still readable when you then add your additional texture layer on top of it. Because this currently feels relatively generic, you know? So that is something that you have to balance a bit better. And I think it comes down to like the texture or the detail normal that you slap on top of it. But that is quite easy to fix because the sculpt itself is actually quite nice. I would say that it would be nice to have more variation in terms of the actual shapes, right? Because what I like about these rocks is that, again, we have a relatively nice section that is like nice and clean. And then we have like a section that is like really dense with detail, right? And as an environment artist, that gives us like more flexibility in where we place things, right? The way that we could create that, let me actually see. This is probably the bottom, right? Yeah. So let's say, for example, we have these ridges on like a section of this rock, right? So these are like the ridges where I have them. And then if we rotate the rock, it kind of becomes cleaner and less ridgy, right? And now I still use like the same rock, but I have more different surfaces to play around with. And it gives me more flexibility to then rotate and place rocks with specific reasons so that I can then create more variation in the scene, right? So we're basically making a singular rock more modular than if we were to just have like ridges going all the way around it. So thinking more modular about the rocks and like the sculpt and the detail that you add on top of it could be a way to go, because then you can still use the same rock, but let's say this is the section that has like all the ridges, and then we just like rotate it like 180 degrees, right? And then we have like a clean section that we can use again, and it gives us more flexibility, right? So that would be my main thing that I would have a look at. But yeah, current materials are from Quixel. Oh, interesting. So in that case, yeah, you need to find a way to make them read better, right? And like reduce the amount of noise that just comes from those materials if you are planning to use them, right? If you want to recreate them by yourself at a certain point, that's fine. Because yeah, you can kind of see it here, right? Like you have like nice large shapes that are like really interesting to read, and then you have like medium shapes, and then you have like very high density like smaller shapes, right? So there's like this hierarchy that happens between like, well, it's the big, medium, small, right? It's very common. Honestly, if this doesn't make sense, look at our workshop with Ivana. She did a great job explaining all of this, where you kind of start with your bigger shapes, add medium details in those bigger shapes, and then focus on like certain areas with smaller shapes. And that creates like a really nice reading stone, right? So yeah, have a look at that. Was using Quixel as quick testing, but I will definitely get those things addressed. Yeah, it's not only Quixel's thing, right? Like it's not only Quixel's fault that this rock looks noisy. I think trying to focus on, because basically, okay, so if we look at this, right? This is Quixel's fault at this point, right? The texture that you're using from Quixel, that is the fault that we have so many small issues. You're still in control of these two. Because that is the majority of that comes from the sculpt. Right, so even if we were to fix the smaller issues, we would still have to improve upon like the big and the medium shapes as well. To have them all work in tandem, right? Cool. Yeah, nice one, those one. It's a cool little scene. A cool little scene. Continue building on ZBrush. Yeah. Yeah. Nice one, man. Thank you for showcasing your work. I'm excited to see how this is going to evolve. Hello, Peter Lynn. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you back. How are you doing? Yeah, it's insane they haven't done this and internally combining texture sets into one. Yeah, that's true. I think, well, texture sets, yeah. Yeah, I personally wouldn't use it that much, but I can see a lot of people that would be like quite happy with that too. Yeah, but oh my God, the second UV thing. Honestly, I haven't updated my Substance Designer or like, well, my Substance Suite in like 5 years now, right? The main thing, well, yeah, so here's the thing, like, if they would add that update, I would still buy it, right? I would still buy the update because that is by far like the best game-related update that they've made in a long time, which, from my opinion, I don't think you sound so conflicted, Tim. Yeah, because I'll explain why, right? So there is a part of me that is like, I really want to have that feature. But there's also a part of me that is, I think they missed a boat on it already. Because if you look at the toolset that Unreal is building into their engine right now, would I even use it? And I don't think so. I think it would still be relative, or like, I think it still would be like really helpful for developers that aren't working with Unreal, right? So if you have your own proprietary engine, that is still like a really, really useful feature to have. If I was using Unreal, I honestly would cut that whole process out and just bake my maps in Unreal and just do it that way. But yeah, that's also assuming that I would have control over the pipeline, right? Basically the stuff that I was doing with my medieval scene, right? The reason why I just didn't want to generate like RGB masks for like all my assets is because I would want to, it's just like this annoying step where not only do I have to now make a duplicate asset that has like the second UV in the first slot, because otherwise you can't see what you're doing. I then need to export that. I then need to bake a whole bunch of stuff, have like a system set up there, and then export all that stuff where I can just literally click a button in Unreal, you know? Oh no, sorry, Peter Lynn. I'm talking about, well, basically what it comes down to, I'm talking about instead of baking RGB masks, I would prefer to bake all that data in Vertex data instead, because that is just like a one-click thing compared to, oh, now I need to think about that in my entire pipeline, right? Of course, you can build tools and all that kind of stuff for that if it was like a proper development, but If it was just like me doing it by myself, I would probably bake it in Unreal. Even with like some of the restrictions there. They're holding off on features, so there's something to add every year. I honestly think that Substance, or like the whole Substance suite, I guess. I don't even know what the official name is anymore. They're just not focused on games. They are just focused on the design world and like all of those things, because the core tool set that they have for games is really robust. And now I think what they're focusing on is just integrating properly with Creative Cloud and making their material pipeline useful in Photoshop and like other programs and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think they care too much about the game side of things, because they probably already captured like 90% of it anyway. So why? You know, there's no competitor. Second UV channel will greatly benefit any workflow though. Not really, not any workflow. And I think I love playing devil's advocate, right? I personally would love it. I would love it. But I think in the grand scheme of things, if we look at the amount of money that they're earning, and if you look at the markets that they're earning it from, I assume that games is relatively small in that pie chart compared to just like the design industry and like the automotive industry, and yeah, kind of the same with Autodesk and Maya, right? Like they're kind of in the same thing, right? Whereas like, yeah, they do like games on the side, but like the majority of their money probably comes from like the automotive industry and all that kind of stuff. I had the chance to speak with them recently, and one of them did say that some features seem simple. Oh, no, I'm not saying that it's simple. I know how this stuff works by doing like games for 10 years. Oh my god. It's definitely not simple. But yeah, I can imagine that it would like require building a huge chunk, because also yeah, they've built without that assumption in the first place, right? Because for us, it would literally be like, oh, but this is a Switch, right? And they kind of have like a similar workflow when it comes to different texture sets as well, but it's completely different, right? And if it then would take like a couple of years to get that done, if we then look at like the amount of people that would benefit from it, I think that is the reason why we don't have a second UV thing. I'm using Substance Painter since day one, and people were asking for it a week after it's released. It's kind of sad though, because Substance Designer has it, but why not Substance Painter? Yeah. There's always going to be reasons for this stuff, but yeah. Build for Blender instead. Popowitz is asking, is it fine to start with smaller props, but like a collection of props linked to scenes, such as different variations of roadblocks, signals, or a collection of office props, instead of a singular prop if I wanted to get into environment art? Yeah, it's totally fine. You don't necessarily... The reason why I'm an advocate of starting with a singular prop is because it teaches you the entire pipeline on how to actually make a high poly asset, make a low poly asset, bake that down, texture it, you unwrap it, like all that kind of stuff is basically built into something that's relatively simple to do, right? If we're talking about like a gas canister or something simple, right? All the skills that you learn there is a variation, or it's basically going to be like Cole says, like the core skills, like your fundamental skills, that then everything else is going to be built upon, right? Because even if you want to make a trim sheet, you still need to know how to bake something down correctly, right? Even if you're doing it to a plane instead of like an actual object this time, you still need to know how that works. And I think it is probably better to do it baking a relatively complex prop first, and then simplify than doing it the opposite way. Bake it in engine. No, don't do that. So many shortcuts that you can do. Yeah, that's true. I mean, also, you have to take into account that me speaking about this, it's been a while since I used Substance Painter. I'm not a prop guy, right? So they did add some cool features. I'm probably more aware of like the Substance Designer features than the Substance Painter features. So with Substance Designer, for example, I love what they're doing with the spline tools. And they look really interesting. So that is the thing that made me like, okay, maybe I kind of want to play around with those. That kind of got me on edge of like, oh, maybe I do upgrade. But yeah, it is interesting. I would also say it is ripe for some disruption, right? For like another thing to come in. I think Armor Paint could be, I mean, again, I haven't looked into that tool for like years now, but Armor Paint could be like a good competitor at a certain point if they keep at it. But I honestly don't know if they are still at it. Did you notice about Substance Painter? They released like a version in Steam now, like the old one, I think. Oh, you already had perpetual licenses, but I don't know. I don't know. They re-released like an older one, because I do know they have subscriptions now on Steam, right? Which is like a new thing, which is interesting. Yeah, exactly. So it is now also subscription based. But yeah, I'm using the perpetual license for 2020. I'm still using that. No older ones, those have been discontinued. Yeah, I would assume so. Usually when they release like a new version, they just like remove the older ones. Okay, let's continue going here. It wouldn't hurt them to give us a small discount on Steam once in a while. I think they did, right? Like, well, they used to do that whenever they released or were gonna release like a new version or something like that. Because I can remember picking it up for, I don't know, cheaper than full price. I don't know what the discount was. I prefer old. Me too. Well, so here's the thing, like in my opinion, like nothing really worthwhile got added, right? Like nothing really game changing got added for me to use, right? If we're talking about like my skill set, like for me, nothing really dramatically changed between like the version that I'm using and the version that I see people use now. So yeah, I'm still rocking like 2020 for both designer and painter. Let's have a look. Next one on the list is Khan. Khan is getting some absolutely amazing feedback from Sheila. Thank you so much for doing that, Sheila. Khan is over here and it's empty. Why is it empty? I'm a doofus. Let's have a look. I forgot to add it. There we go. Oh, it's tiny. It's so cute. Let's see. Made some changes. First thing I see is getting a little bit heavy as I'm using translucent materials in both the shops. That covers a large area of the scene, as you can see. Yeah, but it definitely is worthwhile though. Like, it feels way more lived in. It feels way more interesting to look at as well. I feel like you've done like an amazing job making improvements to the scene. Let me see. Do I have like some additional screenshots here too? Let's actually get some additional screenshots in. What do we add? I don't want to add too many. Okay, let's read some of the questions. Let's see. So my scene is getting heavy. That's what we read about already. I don't know what caused it on... Oh, the glittering appears... The glittering effect appears on the screenshots too. Let me see if I can notice it really quickly. Oh, I see. Well, I don't know if we're looking at like the same thing, but does one of these screenshots have it? I don't think so. Sometimes what happens is if you have like a really intense scene already and then want to do like a high resolution screenshot, it might just like fuck up. So what I'll do is I'll actually take both, and usually the second one ends up working out. Another thing that you could do is turn off real time. I think it's like Alt R or something like that, or Control R. It disables real time, and that opens up like your GPU to then do like a high resolution screenshot. Also rendering it above your screen percentage by a little bit, let's say 120%, can sometimes help with that as well. So there's like a couple of options that you can do there. What is the best way to add dirt in the scene, such as cigarettes? It's like, should I use decals or actually use a mesh and use a foliage painter? Okay, so let's talk about that. If you are gonna do zoomed in shots, right? If you're gonna get really close to the cigarettes, you will probably have to do a mesh. So let's see. So close up is mesh. And at a distance is just, yeah, you can do like a decal or something like that. You could even add like POM or something like that to give it like perceived depth, but that is more like an optional thing, you know. So that's the way that I would do it. If you're gonna do a close-up shot, I would do it in like a mesh for SIGs. And if not, I would just do like a decal instead. Especially because if we're gonna look at like a section like this and you just have like a couple little cigarettes, you don't need a mesh, right? I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter, whatever's the easiest, you know? Like if it's easier for you to do like a quick mesh, or if you want to do like a quick mesh and then bake it down and then make it like a decal, honestly, whatever's the easiest at that point. Yeah, so to add dirt in a scene such as cigarettes, like the benefit of that is that you can have, if you're doing a decal, right, you can have more than just a cigarette in there. Whereas with if you're doing it as a mesh, then you're talking about a combination of like, let's say like a mesh for the cigarettes, but then also like a decal for like ash or something on the ground. I would honestly probably do it in like a decal. It's probably gonna be quicker. I mean, yeah, I'll leave that up to you. Honestly, I gave you some options. And then for using the foliage painter, you could potentially do that too, but I would honestly just make like a couple of like meshes if you're gonna go with like the actual mesh route. And then just make like a little collection of like a couple of cigarettes or like a couple of bits of trash, you know? Because for example, if let's say you have like a trash atlas, right? That has like your little cigarettes, your little cigarette buds. It has like some ash. It has like some paper clips. I don't know. It has just like some leaves. It has basically like a bunch of stuff that you want to scatter in your scene. Once you got this set up, then you can kind of make like little collections that you can just like scatter on the floor that just have like all this stuff built in, right? And that is probably like the most optimal way of doing it. Where you can say like, hey, all the trash that I scattered on the floor. So for example, there's going to be like a little bit of trash here. There's going to be like some cigarette butts here. you kind of want to have like some like, especially in the gutters, right? You want to have like some buildup of like some trash or like some debris or something like that happening. All that stuff can come from like a singular texture that is just like used over and over, just in different configurations, and you're just pulling different bits from like your atlas. And that can be like very beneficial if you want to create like a lot of this stuff, because then you only need to create like the atlas once, and then you can just like start cutting out and like adding like a little bit of geo if you wanted to. Like, it gives you a lot of flexibility. That's what I really love about doing stuff this way. Finally, what can I do to make the scene more lived in and alive? I would appreciate any comments and critiques. Basically the same thing that I said before as well, right? Like, keep thinking about like, okay, how do I really push that? I think the dirt still would be like a huge benefit. If you really wanna go the next step, it's really thinking about like, okay, this graffiti, for example, how is that applied? Because right now it is very clear that it's like projected as like a decal, right? But there's probably gonna be like some breakup. It's not gonna look like it's projected. Really just looking at what is there in real life, and trying to get like down to the nitty-gritty stuff, right? So for example, these shutters, they're probably gonna go up and down, right? Which means that a lot of this stuff on the side is probably gonna be faded because of the scratches of like the frame that it sits in, right? It's gonna be that stuff where it's not gonna be clean. Stuff is gonna have, like interactions with each other, right? If you're talking about adding dirt to the scene, if you're talking about like a gradient, I would do that as a decal and just like project like some stuff so that we have like some dirt buildup at the bottom, right? But that's all stuff that we talked about like 2 weeks ago as well. So that layer can still be implemented, right? I do love what you did with like all the lights and like the AC unit. You got like the parking meter, you got like this stuff, like all those little things that you started adding, like massive benefit to the scene. Massive benefit. So yeah, good job on that. But it literally comes down to, okay, just a city life, right? Like, oh, there's gonna be like a couple. Oh my god, what does a bird look like? There's going to be a bird on here. That bird is going to be shitting on this thing. And then we'll probably see like a little bit of poo down here as well, right? Those kind of details, like, they're going to be really interesting to look at, right? Because they add like life. As you said, they add life into the scene, right? So it's literally thinking about those things. And you could go like quite crazy with this stuff, right? You could be like, okay, the owner of the tattoo shop doesn't want there to be birds on that thing, so he started adding like, this is common, but started adding like little spikes so that the birds don't sit on it anymore. And maybe this one has spikes, this one doesn't, and then we see like a bunch of like bird crap on like this cap, right? Have fun with it, right? Tell mini stories that could like indicate like signs of life, right? And it's all the mundane stuff. So yeah, hope that was helpful. A couple of ideas there. Honestly, the best thing you can do is go to like a shopping street, even if it's not like, I don't know, a stereotypical like American shopping street. No matter where you are, you're gonna see these types of damage, right? Like wildlife interacting with the space, people leaving trash, like it's all going to be the same. It's just going to be different depending on where you live, right? Yeah, cool, Khan. Like I said before, awesome job on the scene. A massive uplift from last time as well. So yeah, keep it going. Keep it going. Cups and trash bags. Yeah. Like it's basically just like trash stuff that gets left behind, right? Even if you don't want to do like a trash bag necessarily, just having things that people just flick on the road and don't even think about, like the mundane stuff. Hello, Justin. Is it okay to get feedback on the challenge project in Whip Wednesday? Yeah, it is. I forgot to make an announcement about that. But it absolutely is. So we actually have one from Team 14 today that we're going to be looking at. Cool. And then Vale is saying there's a command line to delay the high-risk screenshots for a couple of milliseconds to avoid the artifact, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, I knew that was a thing when rendering a video. I didn't know that it was a thing with like the high-resolution screenshot as well. That would be cool. So yeah, that could be highly relevant to Swan. No, to Con, sorry. Cool. Let's keep it on going. So Andrew is next. So Andrew has 2 chunky questions. I settled on a 4-shot collection for the presentation of this presentation, telling the story of an explorer getting dropped off, immediately getting hit with isolation, and the magnitude of his task, navigating the landscape, setting up his camp. The final shot is still the main shot, and likely the thumbnail and the hero shot, but I wanted to tell the story in sequence, and the main shot seems like a natural end to the story. Yeah, I would... Wait, so what's the sequence here? So, let me see. Yeah, so I got the sequence a bit wrong, right? So, I think the sequence is literally this, right? So we go from the person just looking at the spaceship flying off. Then we got this like massive isolation shot, setting up the camp, and then just looking out on the camp, right? There's a couple of immediate things that I can say here is the sequence, it just jumps from like format to format, right? So I would make the formats consistent. Format. Because also I'm thinking about the presentation at the end, right? Where you have one almost squarish image, which just, in my opinion, just never really looks great. Then you have like a landscape image. You have like almost like portrait landscape image, like with like a very tall aspect ratio, and then just like a normal landscape image again, right? It's gonna get very chaotic if you want to present that in like a nice way, especially consistently, right? So try to make the formats a little bit more consistent. And I think yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this one here. This one feels like the weakest one currently. I'm almost thinking like, oh man, it would be... what could be cool? I'm almost thinking that we kind of see like the spaceship here first, right? So we have the landing, and then the spaceship takes off. So there's like the unpacking, the takeoff, and the isolation, and then setting up a camp or something like that, right? But yeah. I don't know. I almost feel that it could be more interesting if we just have like a 3 thing, like 3 images rather than 4, because yeah, this one, there's something about it that I don't know. I don't like the aspect ratio. I don't think I don't think just like seeing like a spaceship flying off into the distance is the best way of portraying the isolation. I almost want to see it like a little bit more up close in that case, right? Where the ship is still like somewhat close enough. Or maybe the ship is like still open and we can see like his companions just like waving goodbye or something like that as he's walking away. Right? So like I don't know, a bit more of like a human connection. And then we see in the second shot, we kind of see it like fly off or something like that. Yeah. Let me see. Because yeah, this one still by far my favorite. I like that one because it evokes that emotion that you want to evoke, right? Like it's just 100% spot on, that isolation and the magnitude of just like, I think it's not even a magnitude of his task because it doesn't feel like a daunting task. It looks like he's more chilling, but definitely nailing the isolation part, right? Because we're just, yeah, you're just by yourself in this massive landscape and you can barely see the guy walking. I love that, the contrast between the two. Looks so cool. But this, okay, maybe this is not a good comparison, right? But this is what just came to mind. This almost just feels like, oh, it's like a No Man's Sky screenshot. Where it doesn't have like a proper emotion attached to it. It just feels more like a game screenshot. Yeah. I've been wondering about keeping it as like a triptych instead of including the forward image. Yeah, like what I'm focused on is whenever I make like a sequence, right? So for example, with my medieval scene, I was making like lots of sequences too. And I ended up with this like cool idea of like a sequence where, well, I thought it was a cool idea, right? So we see like a day in the farmer's life. So the farmer wakes up, goes through the wilderness, arrives at the town, sells his goods, gets drunk, and then goes home or like stumbles home and like his wife is still waiting for him, right? But what I ended up doing is I ended up like condensing it so far that we only see like the highlights of that journey. And in the rest of it, like the long trips in between, you get to make them up. So, because sometimes we tend to like over explain things, and I think it's way more interesting to just show the images that really evoke a feeling and are really striking compared to the images that are just like, they're not bad per se, but they don't hit you with like, oh my god, that's the emotion that this image portrays, right? You just really have to cut down like all the fluff. And even say, you could even ask, right? Like this one, definitely isolation. And then this one kind of has like, it has like awe and like isolation built into it, right? But like this one, for example, it doesn't really evoke anything just yet, or at least it doesn't do it to me, right? Whereas like with these two, I definitely get it. Because the composition is set up in such a way that we feel just like so small compared to the environment, right? I love to get into the lore of this planet and how it's on an eccentric orbit around the gas giant, but it ain't gonna fit in our station post. I think that over-explanation tendency is easier to fall into when you're doing something with original world building. Yeah, the beautiful thing about world building is that you set up the base and then you leave enough room for people to make their own interpretations about the thing, right? So you could potentially hint at why it's orbiting around a gas giant by adding like small hints here, right? Because this person is definitely here with a purpose, right? But it could literally be on like the tiniest thing, like a little line on like this battery pack, or maybe there's like a little logo here that says something with like the agency that he works for, right? But it can be like relatively subtle. And just leaving it subtle like that could be, oh, this person is here because it isn't this person, for the people that actually pay attention to that stuff, right? But this is not easy, right? This is not easy. And it takes a whole lot of back and forth and yeah, tweaking things over and over again. Yeah. Interstellar it. Yeah, cool. But I hope that was helpful. So it's not easy, this kind of stuff, right? And as I'm sure you're aware, and I don't really have like the golden, what is it, like the golden key here, right? Like I don't have like all the answers, because I would honestly be doing the same thing as you be doing. I would be doing 50 different scenes until one of them just clicked. And I would be like, yes, okay, that's the one. Okay, now I have that one. How does that fit into the sequence again, right? And just keep going back and forth until the whole sequence just clicks. Cool. Next question then. I love input on pretty much anything. Oh my god. Especially if it's down to the nitty-bitty things. Let's see. Yeah, especially for the character, right? So like, I honestly think these poses, they all work really, really well. I think this camera is probably the weakest one, just because we're seeing them from the front. And that's when it kind of looks like it's a little bit stunted, right? It kind of feels a little bit off. In the other ones, we don't notice it because we're just seeing the back of it, right? And honestly, we're seeing a face right now, and that kind of, to me, also ruins the appeal of people being able to transport themselves into the scene as well, right? Where if we don't see the face, then we can imagine that we're in the suit, if that makes sense. So maybe don't show the face. So it's more like a blank template that we kind of transport ourselves into. Yeah, let's have a look. Stuff looks really nice. This stuff looks real nice. I love that. What is potentially a little bit weaker on the material side is this gray material. It kind of feels like really flat and almost like really fake. Same thing here as well, right? So that could use some improvements, like a little bit more like a roughness variation between the two. That could be very interesting. But yeah, the rest of it, you got some like nice variation. That's looking sweet. Stuff is looking cool. Yeah, the rest of it looks awesome. It's floating. I mean, it doesn't matter because this would probably be the camera angle to potentially cut, right? It's up to you. But it is floating though. Ah, no, not the floating leg. I know. Oh man, that stuff is so annoying when you actually work on like a released game or something like that, right? And then you notice someone the YouTube videos talking about like, oh my god, this is broken here, and it's just like, fuck. It's like, no, please. Yeah, but this stuff is cool. Even on this item, right? Like just having like a little tiny logo that you can't even read like from the main screenshot, but that could even be enough to kind of hint at like what company are they working for, right? But yeah, I think you did an amazing job, man. Like the rest of the scene, like all the details, like the way that everything is laid out, like the presentation of the individual shots, like it's really, really well done. So great job on that. And I love that everything is still kind of clean because it's like freshly set up, right? And then you kind of have like a certain elements that kind of have like a little bit of wear and tear on it. So yeah, nice one. I love it. Yeah, so potentially this shot. Potentially removing that one. Yeah, like Hector is saying, the ground textures are amazing. Done really, really well. Yeah, but still. Mega scans. Yeah, stuff looks really cool. Really, really well done. Let's see. Maybe, I mean, we're talking about like really tiny stuff, right? Like just having like a little bit more of a background terrain here. Because the rest of the scene is like super hilly, super mountainous, right? So having something in here would be nice. Just to continue the theme. But yeah, honestly, the rest of it looks really, really good. Creating the screen textures for the battery and the Atmos scrubber, fixing the Tensio in a few places where there are gaps, and creating the prop demo scene to show off the campsite. Yeah, nice. Awesome. Great work, Andrew. Really, really well done. Yeah, just, I mean, no surprise to you, but we're getting quite close to the end, I feel. So do something really cool with the presentation. I'm curious what you're gonna do with that. And thank you for showcasing your work. Right. Moving straight on to the next one. Oh, that's cool. You can do some like quick animations. I would honestly, so in this case, this is more like a comment for anyone, right? If you are struggling with like a certain aspect of your scene that is not directly related to you getting better at what you want to do, right? For example, those props, there's probably animators out there that are dying to like animate like a couple of these props, right? But they usually make them themselves, or they get them from like an asset pack or something like that. Talk to someone and then just like share credit, get like additional exposure for free, basically. You know, there could be cool stuff there. Cool collaborations that you could do with people outside of your field. But that could be nice. All right. Next one up is Vedant. I have the before and after. So this is like the new iteration on the right, and this is like the old iteration. Let's have a look. I would like to get feedback on the overall environment, as I'm not strictly following the refs, so I'm open to ideas. More realistic approach to lighting as a closed space with no natural light. So yeah, if we're talking about lighting, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about, right? So these can both be realistic interpretations of lighting, right? It's just one lighting setup is more warm than the other, right? So in this case, like whether you want to have like warm or cold lighting has nothing really to do with like realistic things, right? Like the realism of the scene. It's just, yeah, it's a different interpretation, right? So for example, this one could be more cozy, where this one feels a little bit more clinical, right? Like just because we're using like a different warmth of light. But honestly, when it comes to creating realistic lighting and doing like really good post-processing and making stuff look really realistic, I'm not the best at that either. So I will direct you to finding some really good tutorials. Like a week ago, I think I shared like 5 tutorials that I really quickly found on YouTube by, I think it's literally called How to Make Unreal Engine Look More Realistic or something like that. And there's a bunch of cool lighting artists that do like a really great job on how to actually get your renders to look more realistic by doing post-processing, setting up your lighting correctly, all that kind of stuff. So probably have a look at those, honestly. They do a way better job than I ever could. So I will direct you to them instead. Cool. Let's have a look at the scene itself, right? So the composition of it. So let's have a look. So we kind of have like a focus point here, a focus point here. I would honestly... So if we were to do something here, right? So what we're gonna do... black and white. And then we're gonna see. Just gonna do a Gaussian blur. Right, the reason why I'm doing this is because I kind of want to showcase that if you want to be specific about where you want to direct the attention of a viewer, right, we have to sort of make like a hierarchy of our lighting, right? What I mean by that is right now, this spot, and that spot have like a relatively similar intensity. And what that is going to do is it's going to make it really conflicting for us to like know where we need to look, right? So what we need to do as an artist, we need to decide like, okay, I want people to look there first, then direct their attention to that space, and then we go that way, right? What I would do immediately is make this one, reduce this one like a lot. The reason for that is that we actually don't have anything interesting to look at here. So there's nothing of interest, right? So we can actually turn that down and kind of make it more like a fill light, right? We kind of want to have like a generic light in the room that kind of lights up everything, like sort of just to give us like, yeah, a better view of the whole thing. And then you get to decide, right? I think this is probably going to be your main one because that has like a lot of interest added to it. So there's like this whole board that could be like quite interesting. But then you also have like an additional board here where you're doing kind of the same thing. Any suggestions on what I could add? Well, no, we'll talk about that. I think this is way more important than just adding more. And that is what I was getting to, right? So the main focus here could be the board that has like all the victims or like the perpetrators or whatever on it, right? But then you don't necessarily want to have like the same thing again, because now we're we're diverting the player's attention to two separate things that have the same purpose, right? Which is not really what we want to do. So what I would say instead is we want to make this like the investigation board, for example, right? And then we need to find a different purpose for this person, this board over here. So what we can do instead, just as like a quick thing, right? So this is the main investigation. So this is the perp board, right? So these are like all the perpetrators, like where, so you could have like a stereotypical map that has like a bunch of pins with like connecting with like red lines between like certain locations that has like pins, right? So that is where the investigation is happening. And then this side could be victims or something like that, right? Or maybe you could do it as like, oh, this is their trophy board, right? Like, did they win any awards as like a private investigator or anything like that? But we kind of want to make them somewhat separate, right? So yeah, that's the way that I would do it. So I want the main focus to go here, maybe with like an additional, so I would do 2 lamps so that we can see this clearly, right? So that is going to be our main focal point, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Then our second focal point can be something that is, it tells us more about the person who's actually in the scene, right? Cool. Now we get to your suggestion of what I could add to add more, but it is not about more, it's about what we add into the scene, right? So I hope that I kind of made that clear with my little explanation here, is that it's not about just adding more stuff in the scene, it's about being more purposeful with what you add into the scene. So we want to have like his main investigation board, and then maybe we want to have something like awards or victims or whatever you want to do there, right? But something that is different. So we're trying to direct him to the main area that is going to be, okay, this is what they're doing. They're investigating someone who's done a bad thing, right? And then we get like additional context of the person who's in the scene by just doing something else, right? Cool. Now, when what I would add more to the scene, right? If we're talking about more, I would really go ham with this board over here. I would add like a second light, right? So that we're lighting this space up more. So what I'm thinking is that we light up this whole space. So we're directing attention here. What I would then do is have just like a large map and just really go stereotypical, right? So like this is a map of the USA with just like a bunch of red pins on it. And this is like all the murders that they're investigating, right? And have like this entire map just like chock full of like pages of like stuff and like news clippings and like articles and, you know, like a bunch of stuff basically. And this is like their lead tracker. So yeah, really go crazy with like this board over here, and then just have like a bunch of like markers and notepads and maybe, you know, like more of these guys, like more dossiers, like more boxes. Oh God. Oh, I drew on top of the picture. Well, we're doing this now. And then, yeah, you could have like more of those boxes filled with like folders and dossiers, like down here as well. Do like a garbage can, you know, like right next to it, that's like full to the brim with just like old notes and it's kind of spilling over. Yeah, maybe like just add like a couple more boxes down here. The other thing that's going to happen when we add like so much stuff here, that is automatically gonna redirect a bunch of the attention to this space, right? Which means that with this sort of stuff, with this, we actually want to actively have less stuff here. Because the contrast between having less stuff on the right is that we drive more people to look towards the left, right? So that's how I would do things. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to have a room that is equally filled with a bunch of stuff. For example, if we just look at like the way that you currently have your scene, you almost have this like, in this space, you have almost an equal amount of props in the entire rectangle that I just drew, right? It's just equally full. But what is actually more interesting to look at is that we have a lot of stuff happening here. Maybe like some stuff happening in this area, nothing happening here. So this is going to be empty. And then have like a space where we actually start filling up stuff again, right? So we try to balance the amount of stuff by thinking about rest versus detail, right? Because the more detailed we make something, the easier it is for people to look at it. And then also the contrast between not having anything and then having a bunch of stuff is going to help that as well. So yeah, let me make some notes here, right? So you want to have one main light, then a secondary light, and then maybe like a third fill light or something like that, right? But you want to have a hierarchy. And I don't know how to write that, so here we go. Number 3 is rest versus detail, right? That's the stuff that we just talked about. So actually being purposeful with where you put stuff in your scene can help direct the eye as well. I was also thinking about removing the lamp on the table and replacing it with a table fan. You think that will make it look more lively? It's not doing anything, right? Like, the way that I kind of look at things is if you replace a lamp with a table, you're almost replacing it with something that is like of equal size, of almost equal shape. So I honestly don't care about the lamp being on the table or like a fan being on the table. It is not that consequential to the scene. Right? It's not going to add like liveliness to the scene, if that makes sense. And also, again, we have to think about like the more we add to the table, then we're kind of shifting things around again in terms of like attention, right? And I think if you want to add more to the table and you want to add more stuff to it, then it would make sense to then also have a light on the table too, like an actual lighting on the table. But then we need to rebalance the whole scene to make that work again, right? But replacing the lamp with a table fan, like, doesn't make a scene more lively. That is just your, what is the best way of saying this? It's a good question. It's just you're replacing one aesthetic for a different aesthetic, but it doesn't add or subtract anything, if that makes sense. Because it's just an item, right? I know that sounds so weird to say, because obviously like some more complex items and like some props can have like storytelling and all that kind of stuff to it, right? But like just a lamp or just a table fan, like they don't have like a lot of story to them. If you wanna make the place feel more lively, I would focus on the character that lives in the space And I know this sounds stupid as like an environment artist, right? But we wanna be able to, if you wanna make a place feel lively, we kind of need to focus on the people that live in that space and how they interact with the space, right? So you got the stereotypical thing of like, okay, my detective is like a freakish, like a freak alcoholic, right? That could give you like an indication of the person who's behind it, and that could make the scene more lively as a consequence, right? Because his personality is going to be tainting the whole space by his behavior, right? Like if he's constantly drunk, you're probably going to see like stuff scattered all over the place. Like you're going to see spills with like whiskey. You're going to see empty whiskey bottles. He might have like a liquor cabinet, you know, like that makes the space more lively, because now we can look at the space and we can see hints of a person who lives in that space, and that makes it more lively. But a table fan or a light doesn't have anything to it, right? I hope that makes sense. But yeah, cool, Vedant. Thank you so much for sharing your work. Great little updates. Yeah, like I said, a couple of fundamental things here, but the stuff you're adding to the scene is looking really good. It's just we need to push it more together and focus on the hierarchy of the scene a little bit. Awesome. I just realized what time it is, and we are not making good progress. Dang it. Okay, let's put some pep in my step. Long time no post. This is from that we're looking at. I added more foliage, more lighting, blah, blah, blah. One gripe I'm having is with the 5th aerial shot. I feel like from all of them, but thank you for the feedback, Tim. As is my first environment, it's pretty confusing for me sometimes. No, that's fine. It's understandable, right? Like, if I would give you like some fundamental advice, it would be look through the lens of the story, right? And the story in this case is like a detective, but what kind of a detective is he? What kind of crimes is he focusing on? What is his behavior? Is he famous? Is he poor? Like, there's so much stuff. Like, there's so many ideas for assets that you can make in your scene by focusing on a person that isn't even a part of the scene, if that makes sense. Because if you have even just like, okay, he's a successful detective, his space is going to look completely different compared to a detective that's just starting, right? Or if he's a detective that is investigating like homicides, his space is going to look different compared to a detective who's investigating, I don't know, like burglaries or something like that, right? So try to look through the lens of, it's almost like you're doing an RPG, right? You're doing role play. You gotta imagine yourself in the scene as the detective and what kind of detective you are. That sometimes makes it fun. Let's go back to that. So I feel like out of all of them, it's the weakest one, and it feels quite empty. Any pointers on improving it? So we're talking about this scene over here. Honestly, I think it's just the weakest one because it doesn't focus on the actual cool stuff in the scene. Right? The cool stuff in the scene is the massive tree in the back. And just doing like a top-down shot is just not a very interesting shot, just by the nature of it, right? If you wanted to make a scene like this cool, you have to double down on the actual infrastructure of the scene itself. So that means, how do we make the roads look more interesting, right? How do we actually organize like people's personal spaces? Do they have gardens? Like what happens in between like all these spaces? Like, there's a lot of empty areas that we have to solve for. But I think the easiest option is to just not do like a top-down shot, honestly. Because sometimes like the amount of time that we would need to invest is probably exponentially bigger than just like, for what purpose, right? That's what I'm asking here. Just to give you an example, what could be interesting is if we then look at, oh, let's not draw over the picture again. If we then look at, okay, like people have to have some sort of way to survive, right? So they have like farming plots, maybe some of these barriers are a little bit more organic. Maybe there's like a little gate structure here that could help like divide the space up as well. Maybe this is like a little park. See, now I'm kind of doing like design for the actual space itself. And that is probably going to require like a bunch more stuff to be added. Right? Or just like, yeah, maybe taking some bushes, maybe taking like an additional tree here. I mean, you can definitely fill the space up with stuff that you need. But at that point, you kind of have to balance what we do here with what is happening here, right? Because this tree, for example, is going to cut into what you kind of see here as well, right? So we got to be careful about balancing the two. But maybe you could do little farming plots. Also improving like the road textures as well, so we can actually see like people traveling. Right, with like little carts, little footprints, making sure that the colors kind of blend together a little bit better as well between like all the different textures that you have, because I feel like the earth is like really yellow, and just the contrast between the two is very it is very saturated. It's very intense. Right, so to make this work, you need like more planning. Basically to start it up as drawing, right? So like gardens, like what is this space? For example, who lives here, right? Like what is that space? Maybe this guy is like, I don't know, doing some farming. Maybe this is like a public park. I don't know. We need to then come up with a function for like most of these houses, right? Like what is going to set them apart. That is a lot of work, right? And then improve the paths. Improve the pathways. Yeah, and then texture blending as well. Those are like 3 quick ones that I can think of. Let's see, could I get some notes on the birds in the scene? I would like to know whether they're distracting on any part. The birds. Oh, I didn't even notice them at first, so I guess not. No, not really. I haven't watched the video though, but like in the stills, they don't really look too distracting. So birds are fine. Could I get your opinion on the composition and the flow of each shot? Does a shot flow well into the next? Oh, this is that's on the video probably, right? Let's have a look. Let me show this as well. Don't do this. Oh, sorry, it's cutting off a little bit. Yeah, the birds here, like in the foreground, they just look like a really low frame rate, right? So I would potentially only use them in the background. When it comes to the transition between the scenes, I feel like we're going from like, oh, here's a town, here's a tree, to like, oh, I've not seen this scene before. So I don't even know where this is in the scene, right? In the bigger scene. So think about the sequencing as in like, okay, you probably want to go from like the big reveal to like more detailed over time, right? That's probably the way that I would kind of do it, right? Okay, and then we zoom out again. I don't think that's too bad actually. Just like going back to the beginning basically. But yeah, for this shot, I have no context where that is because it almost feels like a separate scene, right? Whereas with these two, they kind of make sense, but I would kind of shift them a little bit. So I would probably have this one potentially, I mean, it's up to you in the end, right? Like I would potentially have this one first and then go more detailed towards this one and then go towards like the back end again. And like maybe not even have this one in here. Or maybe substitute it for like another view from like another building or something like that. Or like another street. It feels, that one in particular feels like pretty disconnected. Yeah, so is this one, right? Because I just don't know where it is in the scene, right? I don't see like any reference to it like in another scene. And that is the thing that makes it weird, right? I don't have any context for it. And any input on filling the scene further? Like if you want to fill the scene further, I would focus on this potentially. Like really think about like the urban planning aspect of it, right? Because if you want to keep like a top-down shot, this would be the major scene to like focus on, right? Like the majority of the scene is happening there. So I would probably invest like a lot there because it's gonna affect like all the other scenes, right? So if you do focus on this guy, that's also gonna have like knock-on effect on this one here as well, where that's gonna be improved too. And then I wanted to do a night version of one of these shots. How would you go about keeping the lighting and materials organized for each version? Many of my folders have some kind of a missive? Why? That is worrying. Yeah. Okay, so it helps make the shadows for the foliage not as harsh. That is something that you would need to solve with lighting though, then. There must be ways that you can sort of control like the what is it, like lumen AO or like lumen shadows or something like that? There must be a way to tweak it. It's been a while since I used it myself, so I don't know where specifically to find it. But yeah, honestly, the thing that you're highlighting now is like the reason why we have PBR, right? The whole reason why we have this like a rendering system is that we can make materials that are going to be, that don't have to change if we want to do like a new lighting setup. So fundamentally, being able to alter textures that work with a PBR system, that is what we do this for, right? So honestly, I would, if you want to do a night version, I would get rid of the emissive, fix the lighting issues that you have that are creating like the harsh shadows, and then do a night version. That's the way that I would do it. It would be fine if, like Mcfal says, if you have like glowing bushes with like maybe glowing berries or something like that, right? Then having emissive is totally fine. But using like an emissive texture to then get rid of like shadows that are being caused, like that is a lighting issue that you're trying to solve with a texture issue, like with a texture thing. And that is hacky. And I know that games are all about hacky stuff, but that is a little bit too hacky. Because you're kind of breaking the rules, right? Let's see, no contest in fixing it in lighting, but something that really helps for setting up materials for night and day is using material parameter collections and adjusting the values in sequencer. That could be a thing. So I'm not opposed with necessarily like changing the values, right? If you wanna be like able to fine tune things. So yeah, I'm not opposed to that necessarily, as long as like the fundamentals are correct, right? And if you want to, oh god, what is it, like the levels? I've never used it myself even. Like either the layering system or the level system. Well, probably not levels, where you can basically toggle on and off like a separate layer. That could be really helpful if you want to make like a second lighting setup, because then you can just like toggle on and off like a layer, and you can just switch between like day and night versions like really easily. So if someone can help me, if it's like, is it the layer system or is that like a different thing that I'm thinking about? Because you got layers and then something else, but I can't think about the other one. I guess sub-levels, right, is also one of them. Oh my god, there's so many things happening. But yeah, that's the way that I would set it up, just to make it like really easy to switch. There's a way to nest levels into each other. Yes, sub-levels. Yes, I think it might have been that. Yeah, thanks, Brian. Might be that. But yeah, look into that. Because then, like, ideally what you want to do is you want to just like toggle on and off and then render, right? Because you don't want to make like completely separate textures and materials and all that kind of stuff for your night version. That would be like a waste of time. So yeah. Hope that was helpful with that. Best of luck with the night version. I would potentially focus on adding additional content or improving what is there already before doing a night version. Because the night version is relatively simple to do once you got like all the content in, right? But yeah, that's what I would focus on. Sweet, best of luck that, and thank you so much for posting your work again. Right. Keep it on moving. Next one is Darius. Last 4 weeks in this project. Let me open this guy. This is looking stunning. Big improvements on the composition as well, which yeah, massive improvements. So that was really, really well done. I like the way that it's framed by the rocks now. I love that we can't see too much of the background compared to last time as well, which I think was also one of your questions, right? So composition and lighting, I'm still not satisfied with it so far, and I want this to bang and pop more. So I'm consistently looking for different ways to change the scene up. If you wanted to, well, so here's the thing. It depends on what you mean with like bang and pop, right? Like, are we talking about like, I want the colors to be more vibrant, or I want the contrast of the lighting to be more intense? Those are two different things that could make it more bang and pop, you know? But you can test those like really quickly, right? So even if we go with like let's say saturation, let's kick it up a notch. Let's just push it to like 40%, right? And let's have a look what that does to the whole scene. Because yeah, that could like help a lot as well, right? Just like really pushing the saturation on the whole scene. That could be really helpful by itself. You could also just go with more contrast in the scene, right? So, I mean, together it's gonna be crazy. Well, let me switch this up a little bit. Yeah, especially on this scene. So if we change the saturation and then also potentially, maybe not as strong. So maybe do like 20%. For this one, I think that works because now we're getting like a darker foreground and then like a bright background, right? But this is where you just have to like finesse things for yourself, right? And you can even do that based on like the individual camera. So what I'll do is I'll do like a base pass that is just in my post-processing volume, right? That affects the whole scene. And I'll kind of get it to like a base level. And then in the individual camera that you use to like render the scene out, you can do like final tweaks where, let's say, for one camera you want a little bit less contrast, for one camera you want a little bit more contrast, and that gives you like the best of both worlds, right? Because you're adjusting it at like the big scale to affect the whole scene, and then you can tweak it in like your individual camera as well. Because as you can see, the adjustments that I did here, they actually work quite nice. But in this one, there's like a couple of really dark patches that are just like way too contrasty and like way too dark for my taste. So that's where we kind of have to like balance the two things out. So yeah, and this is relatively simple, right? So playing around with saturation, contrast, etc. Basically post-processing. Right, so look into post-processing. One thing that I will always recommend, because it was definitely the most approachable way for me to do it, is looking to using an LUT, which is basically a texture that allows you to encode post-processing data and transfer it from Photoshop to Unreal. So what that means is that you can basically take a screenshot, get it into Photoshop, drag in like a little texture that you can find, and then do the stuff that I just did, like increase the saturation, increase the contrast, play around with it in Photoshop, and then export that texture with those layers on top of it, and then you can use that to affect your scene in Unreal, which is awesome. So if you're interested in that, have a look into like an LUT for post-processing. If you're part of our community, you can find that in the PDF as well. That's included in there. So how can I improve the tarp and the cloth on the main building? I used an RGB trim to get certain things, but even then I'm not entirely sure how to make it successfully feel like cloth. Wait, you're talking about like the main building here, right? What is the best one to look at? So yeah, I think Coffee comes up with like a great example, like more gravity, right? Like you wanna see like a bigger push and pull, and basically see like more cloth hanging, right? Because I think you did the top one is nice, but you kind of want to see more of that hang between like all the individual bits down at the bottom as well. And really just thinking about like, okay, I have an attachment point here, have it here, how is that going to drape down, right? And then where it becomes interesting is the interplay between the two, right? So you could have like a tighter section and then like a drapey section as well, right? That would be one thing. Also, think about like how this thing is constructed as well, right? So I love that you got like a trim sheet going, but potentially that trim sheet could be more, could be interesting if you use it in a different way, because I feel like you're using the trim sheet kind of out of textile density. It feels like you're trying to scale it up to like a size that it's not really used for. Plus also, if you think about this tarp, a tarp like this would probably be like a patchwork of like multiple tarps, right? And if we combine those two things at the same point, it really helps us, because now what we can do is we can have a tarp that is made out of multiple sections, and then we can address the textile density issue at the same time, because now I'm making like a big tarp out of like smaller pieces of tarp, and then I can, let's have a look. I can go in here and then assign like separate bits of my trim sheet to like the edges, right? Or maybe even like, I don't know, like a pattern in the middle, like you have on some of them. But it's basically cutting this up into like multiple pieces allows you more flexibility with the geometry and with the trim sheet. And it just adds to the whole look as well. So I think that could be like really useful. Because yeah, this would be like a separate bits of fabric like sewn together, right? Yeah. And that, I love this stuff, right? What I really love is that we are creative in the way that we're solving one problem while also solving another problem at the same time. So we're dealing with the textile density issue because we're using a texture that is like really, like it's too small for the size that we're going to be using it at. And we're infusing like another layer of like depth by having bits of tarp that are like sewn together in like this really interesting way. That's going to make the actual geometry like more interesting, right? So you could have like, let's do like a quick overpaint here. This is what I mean, right? So you could almost have like this one sheet of tarp, this one piece of cloth that is made out of like 4 separate pieces that are just like sewn together with like a couple of like interesting seams in between as well. And obviously you kind of want to offset like some of the seams to make it more interesting as well. Yeah. So yeah, that's the stuff that I love. Like, we're being creative, right? Creative problem solving. Cool. So that's going to be helpful for that. Any cool storytelling notes would be sick. Also, notes to help the tavern building feel more actualized would be great too. I think honestly the biggest thing would be the tarp already, right? The tarp is going to make like a huge difference. Especially thinking about like how the tarp interacts, right? Because for example, this guy feels a little bit just like, I don't know, it's cool, but it's not like Coffee said, right? It defies gravity a bit. The way that you would probably want to add this is you have an attachment point here and here, and then we can kind of drape it between like 2 sections over here, right? And then maybe we have like some rope that kind of comes in and fastens it together. That could be cool. Same thing here. Really just taking care of like those sections, right? And then that's draped around there, that's draped around there, have like a bunch of rope. And it's really those little bits of detail. That attention to detail makes such a huge difference. Such a huge difference. For example, this guy, like you want that to be inviting, right? So drape it open so it's almost like a curtain. Right? Could be cool. And it can still be dark inside, or like you can have like light coming from the inside or something like that. It doesn't have to be detailed. We don't have to be looking like all the way in, but that is just, it adds to the vibe of the place, right? You can also do the same thing with the thatch as well, right? So the thatch in between these like wooden pillars, like it would like kind of curve on top of like the wooden supports, right? So it goes over and then under again whenever there's like no support. And that just adds to like how this thing is constructed, right? You kind of have like a very flowy building if you adhere to those rules. It's going to be really cool. And you don't, here's the thing, right? I'll tell you a hack. I'll tell you a little cheat code. So for this thatch support, what I love about the stuff that we can do, and this is taken from concept art, right? If this building is as detailed as we want to make it, right? If this has like all the bits of fabric and it looks like really well detailed and all the thatches kind of leaning on all the wooden pillars and all that kind of stuff, we don't even have to do these guys because people are going to assume that all the other buildings are made in a similar fashion as well. There's something that we can, there's a focus that we can have on our main focal point because it's going to be so distracting that a lot of other people will just like not notice if we then spend a little bit less time on the things that don't matter in the scene. Because there's this assumption that if the main thing is really balanced or like really detailed and we put so much time and effort into it, that the other things are going to be equally as detailed, even though they might not be. Cool. You also have some ropes as well. Use the same trim sheet or like use the same mesh. You can do so much with rope, honestly. Oh my god. You can have like all these little bits, like have like a bunch of ropes like connecting everything. It'd be so cool. Like even if you just have like, you have like a beam intersection, right? Just have like 2 sections of rope that are just crossing each other like that. It looks like this is constructed now, even though, yeah, it's just cheating, right? But yeah, adding rope to this building could be really cool as well. I think those are some like really good points that I just brought up that would just add like a massive amount of stuff. So let me blast through some of the other questions here. So I feel like I have a massive area of plain sand and a massive area of light pouring down towards the middle key. Nope. No, this is beautiful. The way that you have like an area of rest here is beautiful. I wouldn't be worried about that because this being empty makes this thing stand out more. So it's beautiful. Keep it as such. Maybe the only thing that I would be slightly not worried about, but like maybe try to fix is the tiling of the sand. Just, I don't know, like do something with vertex painting where you blend a little bit more. But that's an easy fix. Cool. Next question. Any thoughts on how to improve my palm tree to be stylized while also feeling pretty good still? I've been struggling to find a way to make a good tileable. I'm not gonna lie. Are we talking about this guy over here? I think honestly what you kind of just have to do is you need to go in there and like add geometry, right? Especially for the one close up, you kind of want to have like this chunky, like palm kind of look, right? Where you can see like the actual texture coming out of it. There's a couple of ways of doing that because you already have the texture. You can use this texture as displacement map. You use the height map of this texture to then displace the geometry, right? So you kind of have that built in already. But there's like, it's in the PDF as well, if you want to check that out. I don't really have the time today to dive into that, but it's in the PDF, so check that out. And that's going to be like a good way to add some geometry to this. To this palm tree. But yeah, definitely, that's what they're missing. They're just missing some geometry, especially in the foreground. I don't really care too much about the guys here. Maybe, well, they do ask like a lot of attention. So for these guys, definitely. But yeah, some geometry there. That's gonna help a lot. For the new scene, what better way can I use clouds to leverage composition? For the new scene. Well, if we're talking about a new scene, then we'll talk about a new scene at that point, right? So I don't think we need to get into that all at this point. Honestly, you've done a good job with the clouds, but for the next scene, we can talk about that then. Cool. Thanks so much, Darius. Thanks so much for all the questions as well. Great looking scene. Yeah, really good looking scene. So be proud of yourself, man. It's coming along really nice. Next one up. Let's see, Malta is next. Let's try to speed it up, even though I said that like a couple of times already. How is the composition currently? Should I close off the background more on the right side? Does the lighting work currently? Was thinking about exposure direction mostly. When making, there's like an additional question as well. So I think the composition is quite nice. The only thing that I kind of miss, is especially because you have it in your reference here, is I would love to get a better idea of where I stand as a person in this scene. So what I mean by that, you kind of have this road coming up, which is great for giving you like some directionality, right? But in this scene, I just don't know where do I stand. And I mean that as in like, where is the camera at this point, right? Like I would love to see like a little, I don't know, like a little section that we're kind of standing on, or maybe like a staircase that kind of goes down here, right? So like a stone staircase that kind of goes down to like this section. So that at least I can relate to the scene like a little bit more as well. So that would be interesting to have a look at. Oh, sorry, video game development. We'll get into your questions in just a little bit. Let me talk about Malta's work, and then we'll dive into your questions. Should I close up the background more to the right? I don't think so. I think the only thing that is sort of missing is something in like the far background, right? So that would be like the main thing that I would kind of think about, because you don't want to just be, I don't know, just looking into like a distance where there's nothing else, right? And it can be like very subtle in like the long distance, right? Distant mountains, yeah, exactly. Distant mountains or something. Let's see. Does the lighting work currently? I was thinking about exposure and direction mostly. I think honestly the lighting works perfectly. I would, and this is more for like later down the line, right? Because it kind of depends on like atmospherics and all that kind of stuff coming in. Potentially finding a way to like darkening stuff on the right. Right, so that we kind of have like a bit more focus towards like the actual area itself, because I do like the way that you have like the separation between like the main building and like this the mountains to the left, but we might end up with an issue where the mountains on the right might take a little bit too much away from the main focus point. But yeah, that's something to explore. That is something that you'll just have to have a look at the way that this progresses, right? And then see how you go. The reference also has a lot of foliage, but I'm not going to add too much like that, I think. Yeah, I also don't think that you need as much, right? Like a little bit could be nice. But if you go with more like an alpine retreat where it's like really high up in the mountains, you could potentially do more with like colder climate, right? That could work. And then your question about making cliffs. Can I use RGB masks along with a tileable texture, or will that look too repetitive for this big of an environment? You're gonna have to employ a lot of techniques, I think. It also depends on how big you make your modules, right? Because for example, I mean, let's say this is a single rock and you want to use that rock all over. That's not gonna work, right? But let's say you make like a big cliff module, right? Because you're probably gonna need a couple of them. Let's say if this is your module, that could work as well. I was planning to do a tool in Houdini to make cliffs. Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah, honestly, that is something that you'll have to try, because I don't know what kind of tool that you have in mind, right? How big the cliffs are gonna be. If you kind of want to generate like a huge chunk and then texture that with tileables and all that kind of stuff and generate like some geo based on tileables, because there's so many ways that you can do that. So it's hard to determine at this point if the best way to do that is with like RGB textures. I mean, we kind of had a rant about this in the beginning. I don't know if you were there, but I would potentially look into baking it in Unreal and just storing like vertex color data, because that allows you to be bigger with the cliffs that you generate, right? You could even have because at that point we're no longer restricted necessarily by the textures, right? So we're still using like a tileable for it. And then we can use like vertex color data on top of it to add like additional variation, right? But we're no longer restricted by RGB masks at that point. So you could maybe, and I'm saying maybe because I haven't tried this myself yet, but like just generate the whole mountainside as like a singular mesh and then just get like randomization through vertex colors, potentially. Potentially. I mean, in the game scenario, we're talking about like a bunch of different restrictions there, but it could be cool to try. Cool. Yeah. I'll see how it works when I get started on it. Yeah, I think that's the best solution here. Yeah. Keep me up to date though. It'll be cool to see what you come up with. It's a cool little project, and I think it works perfectly for generating stuff in Houdini. So it's a great choice. Awesome, thank you, McFell. Let's dive into the questions from video game development. So, oh yeah, the real life place looks so cool. So video game development is asking, hello, I want to know if I can have a portfolio with props, materials, and environments, or is that too much? I want to become an environment artist, but I also do like materials and props, game assets for environments. Oh, sorry. There's a comma in there somewhere. Game assets for environments. Should I make one portfolio with all of them, or should I make separate categories? So the reason why I give the advice that you should focus on like one of those aspects is because that allows you to get really good at one of them, right? And if you want to get into the games industry, you want to showcase that you're really good at like one of those aspects. You need to, because there's so many people now that, yeah, they have like a lot of skills already, right? So what is the best way to stand out in this market is that you focus on a singular skill and just get that to like a really good stage. and then potentially also have like additional skills to like prop up the main skill, right? So there's a T-shaped personality, or like a T-shaped skill set that I talk about. So it is literally just like, hey, I'm kick-ass at materials. I'm like really, really good, but I can also do props, and I can do like set dressing if needed as well. So that means that you have one thing where you like really stand out, because that is the thing that people are going to hire you for. Because if you're mediocre at a lot of stuff, you are just not going to stand out, and that's not what makes you hireable, right? So you always want to have like one skill where you stand out, and then have other supporting skills that can help you be more diversified in your skill set. If you're doing this for portfolio presentations, then I would potentially separate them in different categories as well. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to take you a long time to get good at one thing. So if you want to also get really good at materials, props, and environments, you're basically just tripling your timeline for no purpose. Which one do you recommend? I focus more on props or materials, or for environments, you mean? So the bulk of the jobs that you get now in games is you are going to be doing storytelling. So like set dressing, right? That's going to be the majority of the stuff that you do. It's a weird one with environment art, because you're still expected to know a lot of different things. So there's no way around, like, if you have to make an environment, right, you still need to know how to make a prop, you still need to know how to make a material, and then you still need to know how to set dress as well. What I would recommend, though, if you want to save time there, let's say you make like this monastery in like the hills that we just looked at, right? Or I don't know if we have like another example. So for example, this scene, right? If you really want to focus on the skills that you wanna learn, focus on the stuff you actually like. So if you like making architecture, focus on that, and then skip making foliage yourself. So just get the foliage from Megascans or whatever, right? Or if you don't necessarily want to do like a bunch of rocks, get those from I don't know, an asset pack or Megascans or whatever, right? So that allows you to be a quicker turnaround for your projects by like focusing on the things that you do like to do. And that allows you to build up like skills. But yeah, I would in the beginning say, like, if you're getting into like environments, I would start with, there's no way around it, right? You will still need to learn like all those things to get into environments regardless. And what kind of a portfolio do I need to get hired at a AAA studio like Naughty Dog? I like to make materials and props. Can I make a portfolio only focus on that? You can, but the likeliness of getting hired at a AAA company as a props artist is relatively low, because there's not as many jobs, right? If you look at game development as a whole, what happened in the last 10 years is that there's less and less of a reliance on in-house people. So that means that materials and props, you only have like a couple of people working in-house, and that the majority just shifted to outsource companies. So yeah, if you really want to get hired, the best advice that I can give, honestly, look at people that got hired there recently and try to mimic what they do. Try to distill their portfolio to what you think is why they got hired, and just try to replicate what they did with your spin on it, right? Because yeah, I cannot say with 100% guarantee, like, oh, do this and then you get the job, because stuff is changing all the time. Hello, Pooh. Feedback is provided exclusively on Whip Wednesdays. Yeah, so that's like a community only thing. Will I be able to receive help and related assistance from others, as well as engage in discussions? Yeah. Like, that's all our Discord is about. It's only about like environment art stuff. So yeah. That is all I care about. I mean, it sounds so weird. That is the majority of stuff that I care about and that I'm really passionate about. It's just like stuff about environment art. I really like hard surface modeling and materials and substance designer. So, well, here's the thing, right? So you say that you want to get hired at like Naughty Dog and you like hard surface modeling. There's already like a difference there between the two, right? Because the majority of the games that they made, like they don't really focus on like hard surface modeling, right? So the best advice that I can still give is just like look at people's portfolios, look at people that got hired there, and if your skill set matches, well, your skill sets and your interest matches theirs. That's the best thing that I can say, honestly. Because sometimes you end up in a position where the stuff that you really are passionate about is just not the stuff that that company is working towards, right? I mean, with their new project, I think it's highly likely that they'll look for more hard surface people, but yeah. A company will usually look for specific people as well. Let's have a look. Who's next? So Maddie is next. So this is for the team challenge. Let's keep this train going. Let's see. How can I get my portfolio to be reviewed by you? So unfortunately, we actually stopped doing portfolio reviews because it's just the majority of the same things that I kept saying over and over. So I have like more than, I don't know how many videos there are, but I'm assuming over like 50 videos for portfolio reviews. So I would just like recommend going through those, having a look at them. Maybe at some point we'll organize something, maybe like a portfolio review event or something like that, but no promises on that, unfortunately. But let's see. So so far we're balancing the light around the scene. We intend to have some sort of a bluish gloomy look. Not sure if it looks too bright and can be turned down. The scene was darker and less warm throughout. I will post. Okay. There's no question in that though. Oh, sorry. We're looking for feedback on the composition. The way that the destruction looks where the giant has crashed through, and then anything else that we can add. Cool. Yeah, I would definitely, if that is like the section where like the giant crashed through, right? I would definitely play with that silhouette like way more, right? Like really like play around with that silhouette. I have like a bunch of broken stuff. Like really, you kind of want to simulate that there's like a force that came falling through the whole thing, right? So everything kind of needs to be like torn this way, basically. So if you have bricks, like all those bricks are going to be like slightly skewed towards like, yeah, just something like falling inside of it, right? And the same can be done by the roof, right? So having stuff that is like bent inwards is going to help a lot. Because you want to show directionality here, right? But yeah. But I think the rest of the destruction, like once all this stuff comes down, right? Like linking the materials that are like on the floor. So something called cause and effect, right? So you want to link the materials to each other. So having like a lot of stuff that's scattered on the floor here that is just like a pile of bricks, right? Because this is a brick wall. So linking those two things together, that's going to be really helpful. That's also what I mean with like cause and effect, right? Like this this giant like fell through like the ceiling, and we kind of want to see like ceiling pieces on the floor as well. I think that's going to be really cool. Thank you for your answers. Yeah, no worries. Other questions from Pyroxellus regarding the skeleton. Oh my god, there's something I'm not quite sure I understand. So I have a high poly and a low poly. I bake the UV set onto set 01. If I texture my low poly using RGB mask, I apply the tiny bone texture on set 02. Let's see. The UV salt 01 is used to blend between the normals between the tiling texture and the baked. I'm honestly, man, this is a huge block of text. So let's see if I can decipher it, or I might have to skip over it and then just have a look at it like after the thing. So you have your tileable bone texture on UV set 02, and you have your high to low poly baked on like 01, right? So 01 is for your unique data. You have your RGB data on 02, right? So we have two different UV sets. UV salt 01 is used to blend between the normals between the tiling and the baked normal maps. Okay, so yeah, that's done in like your material in Unreal, right? But if I texture my model using Vertex Paint, do I still use the tiling bone texture as a base, or do I fully texture the model like a hero prop, including all the paint? Including all the color variations. Okay. Well, I think so. If you're baking down from like a high to low poly, you're creating like unique texture data, right? So you already have your unique texture there. So if you then want to texture that with Vertex Paint, then you're just mixing up like a bunch of stuff, right? So you basically have like two options here. Either you go with well, a unique texture is going to be huge though. You need that unique. Yeah, so okay, let's do a breakdown here. So you basically have like UV set 01 is unique data, right? We're going to simplify this. Unique data, UV set 02 is RGB data. Right? And then the question here is, if you want to texture your model using Vertex Paint, so that assumes that we're not using unique texture data, we're using only normals, right? So only normals. That's what my assumption is. And if you then want to texture that with Vertex Paint, then you would still use your bone tiling texture as a base. Yeah. Because you're not going to have the textile density anyway to texture this fully uniquely, because this is huge, right? Well, unless... So there is an option if you want to texture that uniquely, if you do this as like a separate mesh. So the head is a separate mesh with, I don't know, it depends on your textile density, but let's say a 4K texture, right? For example. And then you do the hand with a separate 4K texture for that size, depending on your textile density, right? And that allows you to then have unique data in your UV1 without the need for vertex painting. Because yeah, otherwise you don't have enough textile density between the two, right? So that's probably the way that I would set it up. Just to make things easy, right? Okay, that was a brain dump there. Cool up. Let's see. and then making vertex painting work properly, I don't think you need to. If you have like your unique data, then you don't need vertex painting, right? And if you want to use vertex painting, then what I would do is kind of treat it as like a big rock cliff or something like that. So you only use your normal map, have a tileable bone like texture as a base, and then just use like RGB masking on top of it. So you're kind of treating it as like a large rock surface or something like that. That could also be an option. Depends on what you want to do. So let me make this clear. So the options are fully unique textures plus bakes, right? But that means separate meshes. Or option number 2 is unique normal only. And then you use like RGB masks plus vertex paint, whatever you want to do there for your variation. Those are like the 2 options that I can think of. Cool. Thanks for making me think so late in the evening, Maddie. That was a real brain fart there. But yeah, good luck, team. And moving swiftly on to the next one. Because we still have 6 people. Jesus Christ. How have I been so slow today? Next one is Dinant. Dinant over here making a bell tower. My questions for this week would be the following. Is there a good way to improve the bottom without having to make a separate texture that shows the bottom of the straw? Especially the bottom bits, which look very thin. Oh, this section here? Yeah, so basically, the way to do that is just having like more shells, right? Because now what you have is you have this cutoff point. What you basically want to do is you want to have like more layers, right? And you kind of have them like fanning down as well as you go. So if we look at it from the side, right, this is your current roof. What I would do is I would have like almost like a fan structure going down. That's what I would do. So instead of just having like relying on one layer, you kind of want to have like a fan going down. Oh, hey, Louise. No worries. So yeah, that's what I would do. Just have like a fan structure going down. And also, Louise, I hope that the team challenge is going well. I'm rooting for all of you. So that's question number 1. Let's see, how does the overall composition look? Well, if it looks if it looks weird from the sides, then that means that you shouldn't make like things like this, right? Because you can't just have planes like that. However, you should just do something like this then. And kind of have curved fans. And then now we're running into an issue where you look at it like this. Okay, now we do like 3-dimensional curved fans, right? So it's problem solving, right? It's like, ooh, it doesn't look good from the side. That just means that you need to add like more geo here, right? Because like this is the trickery with like alpha cards. Like at a certain angle, let's say I stand at like a perfect angle here looking up at this ridge is going to completely disappear because it's just flat, right? And the way that you kind of like, basically what you need to do is you just add like a little bit more geo so that you make this like curved and you kind of give it like a full effect. And then you kind of have like stuff draping down from the sides to kind of hide the fact that it's just like, it's a hollow shell, right? So we're kind of just trying to pack stuff in there. However, this is like when I was showing my thatch that I made, right, from my scene, this is why I have, that's why I have like all those separate layers, right? So I have like the main body of the thatch, I have like the structure of the thatch itself, so where I can have like dead ends and I can kind of make that true, right? Because I know that this is like a big thing with thatch. So ideally what you want to do is you have like a shell, right? And that forms the base. And then we start dressing up that shell, or like that block basically, with like additional shells on top of it. Right, and that's where like the different rows can come in. So we start out with like the different rows that you already have, which work quite nice, right? So that's like the base structure. Cool. And then we start adding like more things to it, right? And then we kind of have like an overhang. Oh my god, this blue is terrible. Hello? Oh, there we go. And you kind of have this overhang, this basically just stuff that we just talked about, right? We have like multiple layers here. And you just like, you keep building it up, right? And then you have like a couple of these bits that are just like poking out. That's what's happening here already, but it didn't expand it to the edges completely since I wasn't able to create an underside piece for this because of the hundreds of little holes it would need. I'm not too sure what you mean. Because it looks really flat though. No matter what we say about it, it still looks like really flat, right? It needs more volume, it needs more bulk. That's what we're after. Because that is what you're saying as well, right? It still feels like really flat. Then we just need to increase the bulk of it, right? Because I can tell that you got like stuff happening here, right? So you have like these like little fronds, but it's about like the main silhouette, right? The main silhouette doesn't change anything. Like what you kind of want to see is you want to have like little bits that are just like sticking up here, and especially on the sides as well, right? Because it's a silhouette that matters, right? Like having like a little bit more undulation and having like these things where you just have like this complete clean like 3D looking thing. We need to be able to break that up. And that is where something like soft selection comes in handy, because I usually collapse the whole roof to like a singular thing. And then I select like one vertex, for example, here, and I start pulling it down. But with soft select, it kind of creates like this nice little curve that it makes it feel like more organic, like a normal thatch roof would. And then it's just about iteration, right? And doing it over and over. Because yeah, I mean, you got like a really solid basis already, right? It's lacking that plumpiness. I couldn't get over those edges because you could see underneath them at a corner with 45 degrees, and I couldn't fix it. Yeah, it's just about like making good looking thatch roof is not an easy thing. It is not. But in this case, it just comes down to like more and more layers, right? More and more layers. And then next time you're gonna do it so much better. I can guarantee it, because yeah, my first one was a real nightmare too. Like, yeah, just having like more cards that come down this way, right? And having like more cards here. That's gonna help a lot as well. Because, yeah, that's why I focus on the silhouette, right? Because the silhouette is the majority of stuff that matters. You kind of want to break that up as much as you can. So having like these little bumps, these little things, just having like the silhouette here broken up as well. That's going to help a lot already. It's going to make it feel more natural and organic. How does the overall composition look? I mean, the composition is fine, right? It's just... It is relatively simple, which there's nothing bad about it. But the three main objects are the mount with the grass, the bell, and the little hut, as well as the hut itself, by using an RGB mask for some dirt, edgeware, and moss. Oh yeah, I think you can definitely drive that a little bit further, you know, and especially where stuff connects together, you want to push that as well. And get like a nice chunky gradient going on with the moss. Would be cool, like really pushing that like further up as well. And especially where stuff connects together, you do want to add like some darkening or something like that. I don't know what you have in there. Some dirt edgeware. You could use like the dirt layer to kind of create like, I don't know, where stuff connects together, right? You want to have like some connective tissue. Just basically push the texturing a little bit further, because it feels like you're very subtle about it now, but we need to push it and make it more visible. And then, oh yeah, the composition, I kind of skipped over that. But yeah, I think the composition works fine, honestly. It does look good by having, yeah, they do look like really separate. We're gonna have to exaggerate the shapes a little bit as well, because right now it feels pretty. I mean, it looks like you kind of have like a little bit of deviation in the silhouette, but I would really like push that further, you know? Like really push that, because so another thing is, and this is like a general rule for everyone, right? If you rotate something by like 1 degree, it looks wrong. If you rotate something by 5 degrees, it looks on purpose, right? So that in general, I extrapolate that to if you move like a vertice like a little bit, it looks like you made an error. If you move it like deliberately, where it's like a little bit exaggerated, now we're doing it by design, right? We're doing it deliberate. So yeah, push the silhouette. Because yeah, you got some like undulation happening here, right? But it's almost, it's hard to notice. So you can definitely push it a little bit more. I do want to add some further flowers, weeds, and ivy to the structure to give it some more of a green vibe. Yeah, that could be cool. You could almost make it like an overgrown kind of thing. Honestly, you don't have to do too much, right? Just adding like a couple of flowers, or maybe like a little bit of ivy on one leg or something like that. That could be cool. So yeah, give it a go. Nice one, Dylan. Thank you for sharing. I know that this wasn't like an easy thing for you, but keep it up, man. It is, again, thatch roofs are everyone's banes of existence until you kind of find like a good workflow, you know? So yeah, keep going with it and have fun. Cool. We got another question in the chat. Which job in the games industry do I have a chance of getting hired? I wouldn't focus on what's getting you hired. I would focus on the thing that you like to do. Because you're going to be doing this for a long time, even before you get into the industry. And if you're not doing something for the right reasons, the likeliness of you giving up even before you get to the stage where you can get a job is just astronomical. So focus on the thing that really interests you, and then you'll find like a job in the games industry that kind of fits towards it, right? Because for example, having an interest in characters and having an interest in environments are like the polar opposite. Like I've made characters, I've made multiple characters like from start to finish. I just never liked it. I could never like really get as much fun or like get as excited about it as about like environment art, right? So yeah, it's about like exploring things first, seeing what you like about those explorations, and then seeing what job in the video games industry kind of gives you the best job. I like props, but I don't know if studios are looking for prop artists. Yeah, they are. A lot of outsourced studios are looking for a lot of prop artists. Like, and that is not going to go away. Like, the industry, like just the scale of like worlds that we want to build now, like just look at like the credit lists have like exploded, and the majority of that is just outsourcing. So if you really like making props, you're gonna find a place at an outsourced studio. I can guarantee it. There's so many of them. They just don't get like the light of day, right? Because they're usually just hidden in the back end. But they have so many benefits as you as an artist if you really like doing props, because you get so much experience while working for one. Well, here's the thing. If you like props, your likeliness of getting hired at a place like Santa Monica Studios, in comparison to the total job market, is going to be relatively low. Just straight up, because they only have like a handful of people that focus on props, right? So if you really like props, your likeliness of joining like a studio like Sony Santa Monica is just lower, because that's not where the majority of the jobs are, right? That doesn't mean that you're not going to get there. It just does mean that like from like all the jobs that are out there, 1%, maybe less than 1% of prop artists work at Sony Santa Monica, right? So it's a very, very small percentage if you want to get into a place like that. Which means that you can still make it, but you have to be like freaking good. And you need to be in the right situation, and yeah. So there's a lot of factors that go into play. Cool. Thank you for the question, though. Feel free to ask more questions as well. Camille, let's have a look at your work. So what do you think of the lighting? Added a bit of fog in the background, accentuated the shadows, added a vignette, and increased the light. It's way more expressive now. It's way more contrasty, way more intense. It is a little bit more foreboding as well, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's it gives the scene like a little bit of like a darker tone, if that makes sense. Because of the contrast, right? Not that that's a bad thing. It's just it's kind of a little deviation, right, from what we had before. Little different vibe. Maybe even like eerie is probably the best way that I can describe it. Increase the light emitted by the lanterns next to the door. That's cool. What do you think of the composition? I put a few rocks in the foreground and reduced the height of the grass. I don't know if the bat actually gets use as like a guiding path at the moment. I think I need to enhance it more, but I just don't know how. So if you want to enhance the path a little bit more, what you could look into is making the core of the path like darker or lighter, right? Maybe darker is my gut feeling. Because we just want to make it stand out more, right? Because now we just have like the path, but we don't have like the core of the path, right? Which means the path where people are walking on, that usually gets like a different color as well. So that could potentially be a way to like make it jump out a little bit more. But honestly, you don't need to do too much. What sometimes can help as well is just having like a little bit of infrastructure, which is just like, I don't know, like fencing, all that kind of stuff to accentuate the path a little bit, right? That can potentially help as well. It kind of depends on how you set it up, right? Because you want to enhance like the correct parts. So you don't want to destroy the composition or like let it obscure like too much. But if you use it in like the right ways, you could kind of use it to drive people more towards the door. So fencing or something like that could help. Plus, you already have like wooden beams anyway, so you might as well repurpose them, right? That's not going to be that big of a deal. But yeah, I think the rest of the composition, like, it works fine. It works good. You added some rocks in the foreground. I think that works quite nice. Yeah. And the last question, I don't know why I get these weird chunky spot effects with my emissive runes. Oh, like that. That might be like a lumen thing, honestly. I honestly have no idea how to reduce that. That would be something to look into. If it's like a lumen AO thing, maybe it's like a texture thing. I have no idea where that's coming from. So that would be my guess. Like that is like a lumen emissive thing where maybe there's like a way to like up like the samples that it does on like emissive lighting or something like that. I've got no idea. Because I assume that you're not using like a texture or something like that that can affect it, right? If you do, that might also be an issue where you just have like a clouds thing going over it. But yeah. Cool stuff. I just noticed that I made like all my notes on like the side thing. But yeah, thanks, Kimmy. Thanks for sharing your updates. Next one in the list is Paulina. Paulina is next. Hello, Falco. I saw a comment by Nate Stevens saying that almost every mesh we make in environments is just decimated with some decent cleanup. Is that what people usually do? Yep. I tend to retopo from scratch to the silhouette change. Should I be decimating, cleaning it up instead? Yeah, honestly, for things that are not going to be animated, like you don't need to care as much about like your topology. I'll make an exception for portfolio pieces. If you want to share that you spend a lot of time making like a hero prop, right? You should go through the trouble of making like retopologizing it, because it just is nice to showcase that you can do that and that you're aware of it. But honestly, in most game cases, we just decimate things. Not in all cases, right? It's just, so for example, whenever in games when you do like an optimization pass, right, you still have like your beautifully crafted like LOD1 or like LOD0, so your base mesh basically. And then sometimes if you want to get like more performance out of your meshes, what you tend to do is just like decimate them down to like a lower topology. And that is your new base lot. And then you just keep like the base mesh as a backup in your scene, right? In your, in like 3ds Max or something like that. But yeah. So for portfolio purposes, if you're going to show off like a hero asset, I would still retopo it. If you're just doing anything else for your scene, you could decimate it, especially for like organic things, rocks, all that kind of stuff. I would not bother. Decimating it is fine. All right, Paulina, thank you so much for the comment on if I'm feeling better. That's awesome. So questions from last week. I'd love to get your thoughts on the current stage. Most of the main assets are in. I'm planning to add a cradle, a chest, a barrel, and I'll start filling out the space with more smaller things. Main thing I wanted to ask, does the overall composition feel okay? And do the objects sit together nicely? Or would you suggest shifting anything around and adjust the textures? Yeah, no worries. Thank you for the question, Falco. So yeah, I think you definitely got like all the bulky textures in place. In terms of like organizing things, like the actual placement of things does make sense. Maybe the crib is just like awkwardly just in the middle of the room, where I would potentially expect it to be like, I don't know, above the chest maybe, because it feels like more out of the way. But I gotta say that my knowledge about like traditional Ukrainian buildings is not great. So that is honestly more up to you. If that is like a traditional way of doing things, then that is fine. That is honestly what it comes down to, right? Yeah. That's cool. I think so. I think the layout right now is fine. What I would say is that crib is not OSHA certified. So I would say when you get medium to small assets, right, which is what you're currently building, try to cluster them more together. So for example, what I mean by that is that we create like a better balance of certain regions that have like more density in terms of props, and then you have like areas that have like barely anything happening, right? So for example, what I mean by that is that if you have this barrel and then maybe we put like the other barrel like right next to it, so that they kind of form like a little cluster, and then you kind of have like a bunch of like smaller stuff up here. Right? With the purpose of like, oh, this is gonna be like a dense cluster of assets. And then the rest of the scene kind of is more open again, right? And then we can do kind of the same thing here. So that's why maybe moving the crib here, so that we kind of have like another cluster here, and in the center of the scene becomes like our rest zone, right? So that people can like freely look at things and kind of navigate from like cluster to cluster instead of it just being like evenly distributed throughout. And then we can do the same thing on the table as well. So maybe like 2 plates, fork and knife, like, I don't know, like bouquet, whatever you want to add there, right? But yeah, think in clusters. That's definitely going to be helpful. Let's see. Also wondering if there's anything that I can improve upon my main assets, especially the oven, bed, and chest, since they are my main hero pieces. So I think you're talking about this chest. So if we're talking about like the pieces by themselves, in general, I would improve the renders. What you will oftentimes see is that I think, so you already got like a good base, right? I see that you're using like multiple lights, and that you implemented like the theoretical part of having like a 3-point light setup, right? So you have your key light, your fill light, and your rim light. However, I think we can still drive that a little bit further. So for example, if we take this little barrel here, what you kind of want to do, and so you kind of have like a light coming from here. Well, you don't currently, because it's almost like you've inverted the setup. But what you would normally want to do is you have like your camera here, you have like your key light, which is your strongest light, you have your fill light. This is the one that reduces the shadows, right? And then you have your rim light, which is basically going to accentuate the rims of your object, right? And all of those kind of work in combination to like make the most out of like highlighting your asset in the best way, right? And then what it comes down to is you kind of want to, you have some flexibility to move these guys around, right? And once we get to that stage, I'm kind of just like looking for like, okay, if I move my rim light here, maybe if I move it more to this side, maybe I get like a nice rim over here. Oh, that's cool. Maybe if I move my key light over here, I get like a really nice accentuation of the shape, and then maybe I get some like really nice roughness, like a roughness read over here, right? And what I mean by that is that I can see the different variations in the roughness channel, and that is the juicy stuff that I want to see on like an asset like this, right? And then the fill light is kind of just like, it's accentuating like from the other side, but it's not as strong as a key light, right? But you do want to accentuate the roughness variation that you have in your prop. So for example, I mean, I do like the contrast that is happening in these guys as well. But for example, what is, and this is probably, I mean, this might be accidental, this might be on purpose, but this area starts to look nice. You know why? Because we get like this nice read where we can see like the surface detail on that mesh. And that is honestly why we do like a lighting setup. We want to like accentuate like all the cool stuff that we textured on this prop, right? So try to recreate more of those moments. We have a great workshop on this by Angelo on our YouTube channel. Go and check that out. He talks about presentation for props as well. So that is honestly the main thing. And if you are already doing all of this, then it means that we need to go back to the texturing table and like push the contrast on your roughness as well, so that we get more of those like magical moments to happen. Hey, thank you so much for being here, Coffee. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Also, Parker, welcome. Good to see you here. But yeah, that's the main thing, and you can kind of just like apply that to like every render here, right? I would also think about like maybe making like cluster compositions, right? Where you could have like the floor underneath here, right? So you could have like your wooden floor, you could have like another asset here. Maybe let's not clutter this one up too much. Let's see, you could have like the other asset here, and then another asset here, and then have like the wooden floor like going underneath all of it. And then in Photoshop, you could just paint out like the edges of the floor or something like that, and kind of do something more with the presentation. Because you have all these assets, right? And they look really good. Might as well use them. Cool. Thank you for sharing your work, Paulina. Sorry for the delay. in feedback, but great looking stuff. Yeah, and thank you for sharing the updates. Long pig. Watching the X-Files and Twin Peaks. Oh, okay, this is what we're talking about. Cool. Piggy. The things I need feedback on. Wait, hold on. Let me switch over here. Oh, forgot to add images again. Who is paying attention? Not me. Let's see, which one is the latest one? I think that's the latest one. I enjoyed fighting reference for the lighting a lot, just not something I've done before, but it was fun. I'm just not very confident with lighting generally, and even less so in Unreal. Specifically utilizing the reference that I have. Oh, sorry. Where's the reference? I do have the images here, but... Okay. So we've got some lighting references here. I've gone through several different camera angles and still not found one I'm totally happy with, but I'm enjoying having the chair as a kind of a foreground asset. Okay, so let's have a look here. So we're gonna be talking about focus again, right? So the brightest spot in the scene currently is around here, which means that our eyes just immediately get drawn to this area here, right? The issue is that I don't think that's your intent, right? So what we actually need to do is we need to balance the lighting a little bit more so that we're actually focusing on the stuff that we want to focus on. A previous iteration actually did somewhat of a better job at that because the focus was more on like the desk itself, right? So we need to, in this case, what we need to do is we want to tone down this light, and we want to make sure that this light gets all the focus and all the attention. And how we can do that is, first of all, I would make sure that we don't want to make the bulb visible, because that is going to be like a really, really bright spot. And that can be like really annoying if we then want to increase, the lighting that we're getting from it, right? So if we want the focus to be here, we rotate the cap and then we can increase the light that's coming from this light, right? Now, the thing that we want to do as well is we want to give people something to pay attention to. Like, what are we looking at? Right, because if we're going to be pulling the focus here, we need to reward people with something to look at, right? So what is going to be the reward in this scene? That is something to think about. Usually, in my case, that is something that has to do with storytelling, right? So what is the story? What is the vibe? Like, who's working here? Like, what are they investigating? All that kind of stuff, right? I have a bunch of hero props planned out for the desk. I've just done it in a stupid order. No, like, it's fine, right? It doesn't even matter. What I would do is I would get those in like a very rudimentary fashion. Literally spend like 30 minutes blocking all of them out, all of them, and then have them all in the scene. Because what happens is right now we're working under the assumption of something invisible. And that is the death of all creativity. We need to have something that we're working towards. Maybe not the death of creativity, but the death of our production, basically. What we want to do as quick as possible is we want to make a block out. We want to get that into the scene as quick as possible, and then we have something that we're working towards, right? So get those assets in. And that's going to give us like a better indication of, first of all, what do I need to do to make this scene really shine? And also, how much work do I have to do to make it, right? Because sometimes what we do is right now we have this imagination of like, oh my God, I'm going to need to build like 30 props and it's going to be crazy. But sometimes we can get away with just making 5 props and that's it. But we just don't know that because we haven't put them in the scene yet. So get everything in the scene and then look at the scene again and see what you need and what you can cut. So it is always, yeah, number one priority is get things in the scene. As quickly as possible, because then we can assess and then we can go back to like, okay, do I need more stuff? Okay, I'm going to get things in the scene again. And then we'll like reassess again. So it's like we're doing iterations, right? We don't want to do like a one-shot thing. We're doing iterations. But yeah, when it comes to the lighting, a big thing is think about like proper functional lighting or physical lighting. Right, so for example, like these buildings, they're usually like lit by like this like long tubes, right? So think about like how that would be done as like a proper functioning, about like a proper functioning like room, right? Like if this is like an actual like office, how is an office constructed? Like you probably have like rows of like these like long like filament tube lights or whatever they're called, TL tubes or whatever. You probably have rows and rows of them, right? And they kind of create like this very sterile kind of mood, which is fine, but we need to have that sort of in as like a base, because that is how this building has been like filled up, right? No, it's not even about how this is lit up, but like think about the sort of, well, sorry, it is about how it's lit up, but it's not necessarily about making the actual lamps themselves. It's about thinking about like the purpose of those lights. So like with these long fluorescent ceiling lights, they are designed to kind of create this like very clinical kind of light, right? That's like super uniform. But what we have now in your scene is that the light feels like very contrasting, right? And obviously like the physical part of it, if we can showcase that and we can show the source of the light, that's like a bonus point, right? But we don't necessarily have to have that in the scene. So when you're thinking about lighting, like that would be a good way to think about it. Like actually think about, okay, I'm in an office. What does like 90% of the offices in the world look like, right? They have a set lighting, right? Like a set mood that they want to go for. Because for example, what you have here is, it is not necessarily, it's not necessarily like lighting, it's mood. So like lighting, I would describe as like, okay, what is the type of lighting that I want? Is it going to be warm? Is it going to be cold? Like because of the setting that I'm in, right? So for example, a home setting is usually more on the warm spectrum because that is like a more enjoyable light that relaxes us more and all that kind of stuff. If we go towards a blue spectrum or like a neutral spectrum, then we're more inclined to be in like a hospital setting, right? Because that is like, it's purpose driven, right? But yeah, there's a separation there. Because for example, if we want to hit that mood, right? So for example, this could be a cool one because we have a contrast between like orange and blue. So what we could then do is we could make the lights, like the ceiling lights, we could have them slightly more on the blue spectrum, and then we turn this one up to be slightly more on the warm spectrum, and that creates like a contrast between the two, right? We don't necessarily need to do that, because we could also just like go for something more like this over here, right? Imagine that the top one is almost completely gone, and like the majority of the light just comes from like a ceiling, not a ceiling light, a table light, right? So yeah, but I would try to balance the lighting first, so that we focus on the things that are worth focusing on, and get all the hero assets in, get everything in, and then we can look at like the fundamentals of the scene way better. Cool. Thank you, Long Pig. Funny little name as well. So yeah, don't, I know it's tempting. So, I mean, I used to do this a lot as well, right? So whenever you rush past the blockout stage, that means that you're going to be paying double or maybe even quadruple in time later down the line. And I know it's tempting, but the blockout stage is where you lay the foundations of your scene and then you build up, right? But yeah, it is crucial, even though I get the urge to like rush, because I used to do it myself as well. So yeah, not unique in that case. Yeah, thank you for showcasing your work, Hector. Lovely to see it. Curious to see it next week as well. Would love to get some feedback on the props and the God Rays. Oh, sorry, Hector. Would you recommend just going back to the blockout? No, but what I would do now is try to get everything into the scene as a blockout to know what you still need to do and how much you still need to do, and then try to go from there, right? And build it up with better fundamentals next time. So let's see, Plamen, I would love to get some feedback on the props in the God Rays, if anything still sticks out in a weird way. Let's see. The props, they look really cool. I like them. I like that you got like a gradient on like all of them as well. Those look like really nice. Hey, Selena, thank you so much for the sub. I appreciate it. Yeah, the props look really cool. I like that you got like the consistency of like the style going for it now. It might be, on some of them, it might be like a little bit too contrasting, right? Because I like how subtle it is on like surfaces like this, where sometimes it might be just a little bit too intense, you know? If you know what I mean? But overall, looking really nice though. Then the God Rays, I think they're just a tad too strong. And they also feel, they feel too fake, because where are they coming from even? Because it does feel like you have like rooms over here, right? So if the light comes in, I would expect that the light would be coming in sort of that way, because otherwise the sun is literally coming through like the ceiling, right? So you can almost, I don't know, it feels like there's a weird mismatch between like the angle that you have, because it looks like it would be blocked by like the ceiling. Right, especially the foreground one. The foreground one is probably the weirdest one. I would potentially, let's see. Yeah, see, because we got like lighting coming in here. And if we were to extrapolate, I don't know, really quickly. Yeah, it just feels like this God Ray just is weirdly placed, because you would expect the God ray to be like where the light's gonna hit as well, right? But I don't know. Yeah, this one is really weird. The rotation of it is just like really high. I punched a hole. Yeah. I thought so. There was some fakery going on, which is there's nothing wrong with it, right? I don't mind you faking the thing off screen. It's just it still needs to make sense. No, I don't think it's like an off-screen thing, right? It just still needs to make sense from like an angle perspective, because it does look like it's coming out of the ceiling now, where if it was more aligned to like this angle, right, and it was coming more in as like, let's say like this, right, and this is like the area that it would be casting, then it would be fine, because it kind of aligns with like the angle of like the windows that it's coming in with, right? But now we're literally just like, it's literally, if we extrapolate, then it's literally coming from like up here, which is higher than the ceiling. That is the thing that's weird about the whole thing. So yeah, just rotating it down. Or yeah, potentially, I don't even think you need it in the foreground necessarily. But yeah, I'll leave that up to you. I'll let you figure that one out. Yeah, that's good. I'm planning to add emissive highlights to some parts of the wall kit as well via RGB masking, and some very subtle variation like dust build up in the crevices. Would that be all right, or would it be too much? Emissive highlight on some parts of the wall kit. Let's see. I'm not too sure. If you're gonna work with emissives, then I would probably do that on like, I don't know, areas that make sense, right? So for example, if you want to add emissive, it would be on lights, or I don't know, maybe there's like a little red button on like this speaker or something like that when it's on. Yeah, as long as the emissive makes sense, then it's fine. Currently, they're only on some edges on the props. Emissives? Oh, wait, you're talking about emissive like this? Oh, I would not do that. That kind of comes down to what we were saying before. I don't know if you were here, but that kind of breaks like the fundamental rules of like, what's it called? PBR, right? The whole purpose of like having a system like PBR is that no matter what lighting condition we build this in, like it's going to be consistent. If I now turn this to a night scene, it's going to be completely fucked up. Also, it might even be, I mean, it's probably not going to be too noticeable, but it might fuck up with like the lighting as well at some point, right? So you don't want to introduce emissive on a surface that is not emissive. If you want to kind of create like a fake effect like this, you would probably have to do that with a combination of your other options, right? Like roughness, metallic, and your color optional. But that's how you would do that. You would not try to fake it with your emissive, because that would be scary. So the reason why I'm so harsh with this is that if you showcase that on your portfolio, for example, that could be seen as like a fundamental misunderstanding of what PBR is all about, right? That's why I'm so harsh on this, that like, no, we're not using emissive on something that is not like casting light, because it fundamentally breaks the whole system. Even if it works in like specific cases like this, it's not a good thing to like, it's not a good fundamental thing to teach people. So try to create it in another way with your roughness, your metallic, and your base color in that case. I thought I could fake the highlights with some emissive because I felt like it wasn't getting a strong enough highlight with the color. Yeah, so I think what you want to do there is you want to do it in post. So do like a post-processing effect where you like highlight your highlights, right? You accentuate your highlights that way. And maybe you could even play around with like, maybe not lens flares, but maybe lens flares, maybe bloom, maybe anything like that could help you accentuate the highlights, but you wouldn't do that with your emissive. But yeah, play around with the post-processing instead. Post-processing, I don't know, like bloom. You can even go in your post-processing, you can just filter out the highlights and accentuate them as well. Etc. But yeah, there's probably going to be other options as well for this specific thing. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, nice one. Yeah, I love the improvements though. I really love the improvements. Yeah, great work on the texturing as well. So great stuff, Plowman. Awesome to see this. I do really love like the gradient on all the props. It's such an old school technique. I remember the polycount days when people were talking about this and they had like articles from like Dota 2 that was doing this on their characters. And it was like this magic thing that people started doing. So funny. Yeah. Thanks, Plowman. Thank you so much. And then the last one for today. Looking for general feedback, whether compositional, lighting, art, etc. Cool. I do want to talk about this section here. I feel that, oh, hold up. I feel like in this case, like the whole God Ray is pretty intense and distracting. Oh, sorry to keep you as the last one, Brian. I don't know if you're still here. It's been a long one today, so I do not hold it against you if you dropped out. Yeah. I share this with people anyway in the end, so yeah, this would be like a distracting God Ray. I would definitely look at like focusing a little bit more, maybe just having it just like catch like a nice light, like a very subtle light on like the prop itself, right? Oh yeah, still going. Oh man, where do you get the energy? I mean, I guess you're not talking the whole time, so not like me, just like ugh. You can feel my voice going a little bit. But yeah, just having like the God Ray a bit more focused on the main object, that would be cool. Making sure that like small stuff like this, it's like highlights that can be distracting, right? So watch out for these two guys. 3 p.m. Oh, is that like, wait, PM is midday, right? Fuck, I got like old brain now. It's almost sleepy time. Yeah, this is really nice. Like the way that the blue contrasts with like the warmer colors. It's really, really nice. Where does that go? Such a weird machine. Oh, is it like... I know Tim's still going. Yeah, I know. I know. West Coast time. Yeah, this is the last one though. So, let's see. This is kind of weird. Like, it feels like it's connected, but also not. I'm assuming... Okay, so I'm assuming that these guys go in here somewhere, right? Like a guitar, I'm thinking? Okay, now I have no clue how this thing works. But it just feels like they're not connected, right? Those strings are for the wheel. It is a hurdy-gurdy, yeah. Those strings are for the wheel. What the fuck is a wheel? I have no clue how this thing works. Because they do have tension, right? So they kind of go in here somewhere. Fuck, I have no clue. But yeah. Let's see. Yeah, this stuff could definitely use like more wear and tear, like more variation, right? For my lack of like understanding of the hurdy-gurdy, I just flip back to like the environment side of things because that's at least stuff that I know about. But yeah, honestly, like if you focus the God Ray more a little bit, like on like the main panel, the hurdy-gurdy side of things, that could be cool. Doing like some small breakups here to the environment because the environment itself feels like really clean, especially the walls, right? But yeah, this shot by itself, I mean, it's freaking awesome, right? Don't really have anything to say on this one, on this shot at least. I think it's gone like really nice. Maybe be careful about like the poly count on these things, right? But yeah, we're splitting hairs at this point. The thing itself looks really nice. Yeah, to be fair, like maybe, I don't know, maybe they are like that, but it looks like maybe a little bit of low poly count here too. Oh, this is quite nice. It's kind of, this makes me wish that this is also like a little bit like more broken up. It's like a little bit of extra geometry. You know, like, because again, you got like a slip here, which is really nice, but then the rest of it is just like straight again, right? So it's almost like just adding like a couple of loops and then just slightly just warping it, right? Like ever so slightly. Just that little details, right? Yeah, but the rest of it looks really nice. So yeah, awesome, great stuff, Brian. This looks freaking amazing. Nice. Yeah, sorry about my lack of understanding about a hurdy-gurdy because I don't know where those strings are going. Oh, okay. I think that's it for tonight. It's been way longer than I was expecting, so I'm not going to make it any longer than it needs to be. Thank you all for sitting through this. This was probably the longest session that I've done, like by a mile. So I appreciate you all being here. I'll probably not be available next week either because we do have a special. We're going on a special trip because it's my girlfriend's birthday, so we're doing like a little trip somewhere, which is a secret. So I won't be available next week, Wednesday, but Yeah, I'll see if we can do something about that. Maybe I'll do like a Discord stream or something like that. Have a nice holiday. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. No worries, Brian. You can play them with a crank. It's a cool instrument. Yeah. That's cool. It looks really cool. And I think you did a great job as well. Oh, no worries, wipes. All right, people. I'm in and off. Have a nice weekend. Have a nice weekend. It's not even weekend yet. Have a nice evening. And then we'll see each other soon. I'll let the Discord know if I do like a replacement stream, maybe on Tuesday or something like that. Would be cool. All right, people. Have a nice one. I'll speak to you later. Bye-bye. Yeah, Hector, it does look amazing. It really does.